Hope everybody is doing well in this hot weather. It has definitely been hot. There is no doubt about that. Even though the last couple of days here in Durham, North Carolina, in the evening time, we have had some serious thunderstorms and all along those lines. So it has dropped the temperature maybe down into the low 90s, but it's still feeling hot. And I think the weatherman is saying we still got feel like temperatures of high 90s and definitely the hundreds as well. I know it impacted 4th of July celebrations, not just here, but in other places as well, because one of the popular activities that people love to go to in Cary, North Carolina, is the firework display at Cocoa Booth Amphitheater. And usually they've got music, and they did have some music. They usually have the North Carolina Symphony performing, and the North Carolina Symphony was like, no, we're not bringing out those instruments in 105-degree temperature, because a lot of those instruments are sometimes heavy to move, like the oboes and the timpanis and things like that. And some of them just don't do well in hot weather, like the violin and everything like that. So a lot of people were being impacted, even though there were celebrations going on from places as like DC, California, New York, a number of other places. And I understand that Raleigh had a celebration that celebrated all 100 counties here in North Carolina and all along those lines. I've got to get back to watching it on YouTube and seeing that celebration that took place some 4 days ago and all along that kind of way. And of course, on July 1st, I usually joke that that is my birthday celebration with the Eno Festival, because I've done that for a number of years. It's celebrated at a state park that is going through renovations, and they'll do their celebration instead of in July, in September. Because I used to joke with some of the attendees that they thought they were celebrating the nation's birthday, they thought they were celebrating the state park, but they were really celebrating my birthday. So all those artists, the food trucks, and everything else was there for my birthday and everything like that. So I would jokingly say that it was a big birthday celebration for me, because sometimes you just like that, put things on yourself and everything like that. I'm sure that my guests can relate to that. I've got this lovely mother-daughter team that are going to come on, and they'll share about their travel experiences as well. I actually need to do more travel. I was doing one of them surveys yesterday, and I think I've been to 8 states out of the 50, and there's a couple of them that I'm trying to remember if I ever actually went to them, because I know that my aunt and uncle passed away not that long ago, probably a couple of weeks ago, and everything like that, that they used to live in Delaware, but I don't ever remember visiting them when they were in Delaware. So there were a couple of states that I am not 100% sure about, but there's at least 8 that I know that I went to and everything like that. And I know some people were putting down 17 and 30 and 40, and my guests have actually traveled all over the country, so they've probably been to all 50. But I'm going to find out if they missed any state and what some of the travel places that they would have loved to have gone, and all in that space. But this is a mother-daughter team. They travel around, and they've got all kinds of tips. I know one tip that I'm always talking about is that we used to do a blues festival at the Hayti Heritage Center, which is a cultural arts center that I work at and everything like that. And while I never had the need to go on a trailer, like a traveling trailer, I do know that those traveling trailers make great dressing rooms. Because when we did that blues festival for 30 years, we would sometimes rent from one of the trailer companies, and great artists like Buddy Guy and even Coco Taylor, when she was living, and Denise LaSalle, I think that she's passed as well, would be using those trailers as their dressing rooms when they were not on stage and when they weren't doing other things like being in hospitality areas and all along those lines. So some of those traveling trailers can be used for dressing rooms. As a matter of fact, even at Hayti right now, we're in the middle of our 50th season, and they decided to have like a real season, but we don't have dressing rooms converted yet, even though we may do some conversions and have true dressing rooms and everything like that. So we did rent a couple of trailers recently, and one of them was to be a trailer, I think, for Branford Marsalis when he performed, and to be a trailer for others as well. So before I bring in my guests, and I'm looking forward to hearing their thoughts about travel and being women travelers and everything like that, I will say that a lot of people are also following the World Cup. I don't know if my traveling ladies have been to any of the World Cup cities, or if they've got any plans to go to the World Cup, because there's a lot of people, like tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, and in some places maybe even millions, that are definitely checking out our cities here in Mexico, the United States, as well as in Canada, even though none of the host countries are in the Final 8. I hate to say that, because I was watching some of their matches, was hoping the USA would be able to pull it off, but but they couldn't pull it off. They got beat by Belgium. Canada got beat, I think that was by Morocco and everything like that. And I'm trying to think who took out Mexico. I think it was one of the Norway. That's who took out Mexico and everything like that. So there's a lot of European countries and Argentina, one of the Latin American countries, and at least one African country, that being Morocco, in the final eight and everything like that. So we'll see who wins. I think last year it was France against Algeria, and maybe there'll be a rematch of, not last year, 4 years ago, because it's held every 4 years. So maybe it'll be a rematch of that particular race. I was actually rooting for some upsets. Like I said, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes you want to see upsets. So when Algeria was playing Egypt and Egypt was up, I was hoping that Egypt could knock them off just so we could have a little bit of difference and everything like that. Because sometimes you want to see some upsets as well. So I'm going to bring in my guests and see what they've got to say about travel and if they've been to any of these sports events and everything along those lines. So I've definitely got Evelyn and Natalie Kelly and everything in that way. And definitely looking forward to hearing about their travels and where they have gone to and their great tips for how to handle travel and even traveling together. Because, some people would be sitting there going like, I personally, because I call her regularly. I'm a big fan of my mother. I'm a big fan of my dad. I actually heard from Dad yesterday and everything like that. And even a big fan of my brother and my two nephews. I don't have any kids of my own, but my two nephews, the oldest just graduated high school because my brother had kids late in life and everything. So he's now getting ready to go to UNCG, University of North Carolina, Greensboro. And then his brother will be following him next year. I think he wants to go into political science with a concentration in law since he wants to go to law school eventually. I think he wants to be like an activist lawyer and all in that space. So we'll see how that plays out. But, I know from my days in college, I didn't know I wanted to go into journalism, and I am still in journalism. I didn't know anything about event planning, even though that's the other thing that I'm very much engaged in and everything like that. And I didn't take any event planning courses in college. As a matter of fact, I didn't even do any events that I can remember. So maybe a couple of small things here and there, but no major events the way I've done after I got out of college. So that was what most people know me as a journalist and an event planner and to some degree a historian and everything along those lines. So how did y'all get into travel? I guess the first question I've got as we get into the conversation, and we'll see if other guests join us as well. But how did y'all get into travel, and do y'all ever have any conflict? Because like I said, you are a mother and daughter, and I do know that
Right.
like mothers and sons that mothers and daughters can sometimes get into conflict as well. So I'm saying maybe there's times that y'all sitting there going like, I want to go to the Grand Canyon, and the other one's going like, no, I want to go to Florida.
Before we actually begin, I would like to mention you were talking about the cup, the FIFA Cup, and we were in Brazil when they were the champions, and we were at the what is that?
Christ Redeemer
The Christ
in
Redeemer
Rio.
in Rio,
Mhm.
and they had this little tiny television, and everybody was gathered around it and yelling. And I went up to them, and he looked up. This guy looked up at me and said, "You like football?" And I said, I could get into it. Of
You
course,
can, yes,
we think
definitely.
we think of American football, but they were into football, and it was fun to
It
be
was
there.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Well, we started as what 3.5 decades, 3.5 decades ago, yeah. And what happened is my mother ran for a political office. You talk about politics. She
Right.
ran for a political office, lost by just a couple of votes. Meanwhile, though, she was in a really bad car accident.
Well,
So there are two things that happened that year. But my father said, you guys have worked so hard, and just we had some barriers, but what we're going to do is we're going to change that. And so we decided we were going to go to Europe.
okay.
He took care of the dogs, and we went to Europe. And we went to Europe for 3 weeks. That was a huge trip, hard trip, especially I haven't even been out of the state of Florida at the time. So to go to Europe for 3 weeks like that and packing and unpacking every single day. But we went and we got the travel bug, and we enjoyed being together. You talk about a mother-daughter.
Mhm.
We just know how to travel. I know a lot of people ask me that, like, how do you travel with your mother? And it's very simple. We are different. She likes to wake up early. I like to go to bed late. She likes to write and take notes. I like to take pictures. Things. So we are kind of opposite, but we do like the same things. And we really can't, we're flexible enough to enjoy each other. She likes to go do some things on her own. I will go do some things on my own. So that's how we travel. And it's the reason why we travel so well together.
It sounds like y'all travel really well together and everything.
Yes.
I was just curious to your mother and everything like that, because my mother also ran for political office. She's retired and enjoying retirement. She may do some travel eventually. I know she was talking about a cruise with the family and a couple of other things that she's thought about doing, even though she hasn't got around to it. But she ran against our current Secretary of State, because Elaine Marshall has been Secretary of State in North
Wow.
Carolina for decades and everything like that.
It's
So
huge.
she ran against Elaine Marshall, actually forced a runoff against Elaine Marshall, and then Elaine Marshall won against Richard Petty, who is a famous NASCAR driver and everything
Yeah.
like that. So mom could have run against Richard
Wow.
Petty if she had beat Elaine Marshall in the runoff. But I know Elaine's been in that job, I want to say, for multiple decades, and she learned a lot of things about politics that sometimes people forget. Like sometimes people will make promises that they don't always keep and everything like that,
Yes.
including some of the so-called allies and everything like that. So I just wondering, what are some of the political lessons that you learned, and would you ever consider running for political office, or telling even your daughter or other family members to run for political office? Or is it kind of like my mom? I think my mom is done with politics. She tried it one time
We-
for a state office, and
We've been there. We've been
We've
there
already
and
done
done
all
that.
that.
My son was in the state legislature. Her
Yeah.
brother, my
Yeah.
son,
Uh-huh.
and then he ran for Congress. And running for Congress is a little
That's a
bit
different animal.
from the state level. But we have lots of friends that run for office, so we
Yeah.
do have a lot of things that we can tell them. But I really don't want to run again.
Yeah.
I'm 91, and your mother is really courageous to run for office. I wasn't 91 when I ran, by the way.
yeah, mom was in 91 when she ran. I think she might have been close to my age. She might have been in her 60s. So, like I said, Elaine Marshall
Uh-huh.
was in that
Yeah.
office for a long
I was
time.
59.
Mom
59.
is,
Mhm.
I'm 64, and mom is 20 years older than me. So mom is 84. Mom is 84, and dad 86.
Way to
So
go, though. Way to go.
So she definitely ran and everything like that. What advice? Because a lot of people are saying, I had a good friend of mine that used to love, and we lost touch, but maybe we'll get back in touch at some point and everything. But I've only been on one cruise in my life, and that was with a dear friend of mine who's from Nevada, and she used to go on cruises regularly with her mom. Her and her mom, I think her mom got her addicted to cruises, and I knew her from our college days. We both went to the same university and all along those lines. But that's the only cruise I've ever been on, and that was actually, I think, either the year before the pandemic or the year of the pandemic and everything like that. And I've said that I wouldn't mind going on another cruise. Even there are parts of cruises that I don't like. Like I know there's some cruises that are overly party cruises. We'll just put it that way. There's some cruises that have too many kids. Like a lot of people say that Disney cruises are that way. But then there are other cruises like Virgin that don't allow kids at all, or at least they try to discourage kids and everything like that. So I was wondering, in your travel, because we have a show here called Good Ship Happens and everything like that. It airs every Friday evening. But in your travel, have you done cruises, and what advice do you give to people that want to do cruises in their travel?
We have done several cruises, and you're right. There's all sorts of different cruises, and so it really kind of depends on what you're interested in and what type of cruise, and plus the people you want to be around. A lot of people like to go on cruises just because they just want to be on the ship. They don't even enjoy. They won't get off at the country or any ports or anything like that. They just want to go lie out in the sun or do whatever, or just enjoy a cruise. If that's what you like to do, more power to you. I never tell anybody, to do this or do that. It's whatever you enjoy doing. Now, we're not that much of cruise people. We really like to get out. We really like to be on the go and visit as much as we can visit. It's not so much to us as the travel, it's more the destination. But when you cruise, it's more of the travel. And so it just really depends on what type of traveler you are, what type of travel styles that you are.
We have really been into these river cruises
Mhm.
in the USA, and we like them. And you think of river cruises just staying on the river, but most of them have ports because cities were built along the river.
Mhm.
And then you can get out and go, and they will take you to different places. This is not only in the USA, but also in Europe and
Other
Asia,
place,
too,
yeah.
other places.
Riverboat cruises are very popular nowadays. Mhm.
Yeah, riverboat cruise island, they're real popular. I know another thing that's very popular with travel and everything like that. I mentioned my nephew, and my dad and my brother, actually both nephews, they went on an escape room trip because they, like I said, they had to use their big brains and everything like that to solve the puzzle and everything like that, because that's what escape rooms are. They're giving you
Uh-huh.
something to escape out of. And I think that the one that they went was a submarine, because they weren't going to go on a real submarine, but they had like an escape room submarine type trip and everything like that. And I know that here there are some very popular historical trips, and I don't know whether y'all do those, but you do trips. Like I know there's one that we have called the Whistle Stop Tours, and a lot of that is around the Black Wall Streets and some of the other things that exist. But I also know that there's some that are like geared toward ghosts or geared toward murder mysteries and things like that. So I was wondering, in your travels, have y'all done any of those kind of excursion kind of trips as part of the trips? Because I know even here we've got one that's very much around the ghost stories of Durham, North Carolina, and everything like that. I'd like to go on it, but I keep saying that I'm going to go on one of them, because they'll take you on these houses, mansions, and things that have these storylines behind them.
We always go on a ghost trip.
Every single place. If they had ghosts, we know about them.
That's right. We've never seen any, but we've been to a lot of them. But we always love to go to the ghosts and the pirate trips along
We enjoyed that too.
coast are really with Savannah and St. Augustine,
Charleston, all that area.
Charleston, all of those.
Yeah.
They have pirate trips.
hmm
Yeah,
So we really do enjoy that.
yeah, pirate trips sound like they're really amazing. Now, y'all are based in Florida. I know a lot of people will go to Florida for their vacations, and a lot of people will find trips that they want to go to. Now, some people get caught up in the tourist part of Florida, be that Orlando or be that Miami and things like that. So if somebody's coming, say, from North Carolina, or they're coming from even out of the country, because we do have a lot of our listeners, including one of our founders, who has moved to Spain. So he's expatriated himself to Spain, even though he used to live in North Carolina and has lived in Miami and other parts as well. But Nick Valveda, one of the founders of Pod TV, now lives in Spain, except when he comes back for business reasons and all along those lines. So I was just wondering, what are some parts of Florida that you would love people to see or enjoy that aren't part of the regular Florida trip? Because most people, when they go to Florida, they automatically think of Miami, Orlando, Jacksonville to some degree. But Florida's a vast state. It's got all kinds of things that people should be thinking about seeing. So what are some parts that you would like to have people to see that they may not have considered?
You know, Florida is actually a very beautiful state, and most people don't even see that. And you're right. They see Miami, they see Disney World, but there are just some incredible places. Let me give you one. The oldest city in the United States, St. Augustine.
Yes.
It is an incredible city to go there and to see. So historical, very historical. And it is just extremely beautiful. And it's really something I wish that everybody could go see. See, 3 of our founding fathers were actually jailed at the Castillo de Marcos, which is the big fort there in St. Augustine. So I really love St. Augustine.
I think that is really cool. They forget that before Disney, that we had a lot of really neat tourist places, like the springs. For example, where we live, there was Silver Springs. There
Where
was
Tarzan was filmed.
Yeah, Tarzan was filmed there. There are springs all over the place. There are places that we went to just recently called Sunken Gardens in St. Petersburg. Been there 100 years. But when Disney came, these places went downhill.
Yeah.
Now they are coming back.
Mhm.
So this is what we'd love to tell your audience from North Carolina or wherever you are. When you come to Florida, come to see our beautiful springs,
The environment.
because we have a marvelous environment here, and they are coming back and becoming much more important, where tourists would enjoy being there.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I know that I don't live that far from Duke University. As a matter of fact, it's like literally a walking distance, like maybe a block or two away from me and everything like that. As a matter of fact, the apartment complex is named after Duke and everything like that. But I do know that there is a great Duke Gardens, and it's been a minute since I've been there, but it's a great botanical garden that exists. And there's also the National Museum and a number of other things that people don't always think about, including some things that may have a negative history, but it's still good to know that history. So there's Duke Homestead, which I think is a tobacco museum, but there's also Stagville, which is a former slave plantation and everything like that, but it's now run as a historical site and everything like that. So yeah, there's some great things that you can see even in my area of North Carolina. People forget that Stranger Fruit, the Duffer Brothers, actually went to the school here and everything like that. So they actually were inspired by a lot of things that they were learning when they were at, I believe it was Jordan High School, when they were creating that particular miniseries and everything along those lines. So my local history museum has even had displays around them. But I know a city that's just above y'all that I was really impressed with. I only went to it once. Y'all probably been to it a couple of times because it's not that far from Florida and everything like that. But have you had the pleasure of going to Charleston? Because I went to Charleston for a convention and everything like that. I love Charleston. I love the sea atmosphere of Charleston, but I also love that it has some quaint artistic towns and the things around that as well. So I just wonder, have you had the pleasure of going to Charleston, and what are some of the things that you enjoyed about Charleston? Because I have a friend, his wife, I think, is from Charleston, if I remember the Dillahunts correctly in their family lineage. But I know that I went there for a business conference, and I just went that one time, but I thoroughly enjoyed that one time and hope to get back at some point.
I really enjoyed Charleston. Why? The reason why is because a lot of these historic towns, and I'm so happy about this, they are preserving their histories, their buildings, and so on, where usually like in the 60s or 70s, a lot of that downtown got dilapidated and just started going down. And now they're really restoring those homes, the streets, the cobbled streets. And that's what I love about Charleston. What I did is I just went and just got lost and just started walking up and down the streets and just looking at the signs on the side where you see the historic signs where it talks about who may have stayed here or who may have lived here in the past. So it's just so fascinating. I love places like Charleston and even Savannah, to just get lost in all of those different areas in the downtown or the alleys. I just enjoyed that. And to the cemeteries, go and look at the cemeteries and look at the people that were that were buried there.
No, the cemeteries can be fascinating. I had a ex-girlfriend, and we were very much still good friends, even though the relationship it wasn't successful and everything like that. But she used to love going to one of the cemeteries in Raleigh, which is where she lives at and still lives at. But that cemetery is also where Jim Valvano, the famous North Carolina State coach, is buried at and everything like that. So there are some of those cemetery tours that can be quite interesting as well. And it doesn't have to be macabre the way some people think of it and everything along those lines. But it can be interesting to go to some of those historical cemeteries, whether they are old slave cemeteries or whether they're old colonial cemeteries or a number of other things as well. Did you ever get a chance to go to Salem? Because my mom, who I mentioned earlier, used to live in Winston-Salem. That was one of her trust funds that she worked at. She worked at Z. Smith Reynolds and everything like that. But there is Salem Village, which is like a recreation of the old Salem towns in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So I just wondering, did you ever get to go to any of those colonial towns, whether it was Salem and Winston-Salem or whether it's some of the ones like around Boston and places like that? So I just wanted
Been there,
to see some of those colonial recreated towns.
We go anytime that we're in an area, and if we can go to those little colonial towns, we will go. We just really enjoy those. Whether it doesn't matter what state we're in, we're going to go to them. I mean, because what you're doing is, we're learning about our history. We're trying to find out about that, and that's what we really love.
Yeah, that makes sense. Speaking of history, there is a popular area here in North Carolina, a popular actress, and she's got her own museum in a small town. But I was wondering if you ever get a chance to go either to the Dolly Parton Museum or to the Ava Gardner Museum. And that's what I was referring to, was Ava Gardner, because she has her own museum here in North Carolina and everything like that. So I just wondered, do you ever get a chance to go to any of these Hollywood movie stars that have their own houses preserved and all along those lines?
Have we been to any Hollywood?
No, we haven't. I've lived in East Tennessee where Dolly is, but what I remember of Sevierville was just a little one-horse town
At that time.
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah.
And I have passed by there, but I actually have never been in them. So I think that would be. I do think there would be fine. So thank you for telling us. We'll put that on our list.
Yeah, put that on your list. Speaking of things on the list, I know that there was the big celebration for the 250th on July 4th there in DC. It actually carried in because of the weather to July 5th and everything along those lines. But I was just wondering, what are some places that you have gone to in the DC area, and are there parts of DC that you have really enjoyed going to? Because there are all these great museums. I mean, there's the Native American Museum, there's the Aeronautics Museum, there's a number of other museums that are there in DC. So I just wondered, have you had a chance to visit DC?
Yeah, I love DC, and I used to work in DC, and I would my office was on corner of F and 13th, so it's just a block and a half from the White House. And what I would do during lunch, instead of eating lunch, I would just walk around because there's so much history, and I enjoyed going down and seeing Ford's Theater. At that time, they were just still refurbishing it because it was closed down for several years, and so they were working on that. But I just enjoy going around all the historical places in DC during my lunch period. I really miss DC a lot because I enjoyed that. But outside of DC, in addition to that, is Old Town Alexandria. Wow, I love that place. So much history. George Washington, they're all there. And you can go to the church where they were at, so it's wonderful just to be there. And I'm so happy that they've kept those buildings. They've kept the history, they've kept the culture, so you can actually experience that.
How important do you think it is to preserve those histories? Because I know that even here in North Carolina, there are some of those tobacco mills that have been converted into apartment complexes, but they still try to keep some of the decor and the style of the old tobacco buildings, even though they are now apartments, or they've been refurbished and everything along those lines. And even the building that I mentioned earlier, and I'll actually be there tomorrow for a 2-day retreat and everything, but the Hayti Heritage Center is a converted old AME church. So the church moved during urban renewal, maybe about 4 or 5 blocks from its old location, which is what the cultural center is. But we have kept it as a performing arts space and all along those lines. Matter of fact, I've been working with a high school student from Jordan High School. My nephew graduated from Riverside, but I've been working with this young high school graduate who's going to go off to Rice there in Texas in August and everything like that. But we've been finding old paintings because we did a blues festival of 30 years. So we've been finding old photographs, old art exhibits, and stuff that had been stored away and tucked away. Even the old church bell, which we knew was down there.
Wow.
Old pipe organ parts and everything like that. Yeah. Pipe organ can never be repaired, but we may at some point use it as a artistic installation and everything like that. But I just want your take on the importance of historical preservation.
I love it.
There's a lot of places that were old cotton mills too. If you go to Savannah, go especially along any of those rivers in Alabama. I remember going in Columbus, Georgia, and in Auburn, Alabama, that they have those restored along the river where they had cotton mills, and now they're either some kind of office buildings or apartments or so forth. But that is a real trend, and it's good. It is good they have done that.
There's a place, we went to Columbia, South Carolina. And they actually, the old state hospital, they used to call it a mental hospital. Now that, it's just like the state hospital. They have taken that, instead of tearing that down, they have taken it and now they're turning them into apartments. Wow. And the whole area now is bustling with businesses and this just incredible old historic church that they would actually go and pray in. Now they're refurbishing that too as well. So I'm happy that they're just not taking those buildings and just tearing them down like they would do in the 60s and 70s, and then put up these 60s and 70s type of architecture, and then those now are kind of coming
and
down.
They fall down.
Not lasting.
Yeah, but they fall down like they were doing there in New York. I know there's a building that they just had to kind of shore up, and they're hoping that it'll stay up and everything like that. I was just wondering because I have not been recently, but I have gone a couple of times. The last time I think I went, might have been around the time of Sandy. So that I'll tell you that it's been a while. But the times that I've been to New York, I've
Wow.
actually enjoyed New York and all along those lines. But I just wanted your take on the city of New York, but also the state of New York. Because New York is kind of like Florida. It's got more than just New York City and everything like that. And Buffalo, it's got a number of other great places. Even though there's some great Broadway shows in New York,
Yeah.
even though we get some of those Broadway shows even here, because the DPAC is a Broadway traveling facility. So a lot of the Broadway shows will eventually come down here
Uh-huh.
to the DPAC and everything like that. But I just wanted your take on those kind of attractions in New York, and whether New York is one of the places that you enjoy going, or maybe you even worked there. You worked in DC, maybe you worked in New York.
No, we
Yes.
did. We went on a river cruise
Uh-huh.
from New York to Albany,
Oh, wow.
and it was really cool.
It was
Yeah.
nice. I really enjoyed it. Beautiful. It was during during the leaves. They were
Yes,
changing the
October.
time. Yeah.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. And again, you're right. Everybody thinks of New York as New York City, but there's so much more to New York, and you really don't know it if you just go to New York City and you leave. Yes, is New York City incredible? It certainly
Yes,
is. I used
yes.
to go there a lot for my job, but to go to the other places, and we always encourage people to go to other places, enjoy, learn about the history, learn about the culture, because New York City is just one little area, but
Right.
that's a huge state.
You get into all of the Dutch culture that
Mhm.
is in upstate New York, which is absolutely interesting, and we really enjoyed going to Sleepy Hollow.
Oh,
There were ghosts there.
There goes.
Supposedly.
See, we told you we love ghosts.
Sleepy Hollow has that famous ghost story and everything like that. So definitely the Headless Horseman, I believe, was in Sleepy
Yeah.
Hollow and everything
That's
like that. So there's some
Yeah, we were
good-
looking for him, but we didn't find him.
Never. We didn't see that headless horse.
Not at least not that one.
You do see that Headless Horseman. Well, I know here in North Carolina there is supposed to be a famous ghost train that exists around the mountains and everything like that. So I don't know if you've ever been down to that ghost train, but there's supposed to be a famous ghost train that you're supposed to hear the train whistle go by, even though the train isn't running at that particular time. So it's supposed to be a famous ghost train. I think it's in the Great Smoky Mountains and everything like that. But I do know there's supposed to be a famous ghost train. So it's not just horsemen; it's also trains and other things.
Exactly.
Like I know there's some people that say if you go to the coast, you may run across some famous pirates that are no longer here on the planet as well. So there's a lot of things that are in that space. I have a good friend of mine, and actually she was just featured because she created a scholarship named in her and her mother's name and everything like that for North Carolina Central University, which is one of our HBCUs and everything like that. But she used to travel a lot overseas because of her job, and she used to love going to places like Brazil and I think Paris and other places. But she would not just try to go and do the sales job because she was like a pharmaceutical rep and stuff like that. So of course she's trying to sell to the hospitals, but she used to also love going to other parts of the world and enjoying their culture. She didn't want to just be there for job and job's sake alone. And she's even part of International Focus, where she's helping international students come to our area and learn about our culture and everything like that. So I was just wondering, y'all's take, is all of your travel been in the United States, or have you had a chance to travel overseas as well? And what are some of the overseas places that you have really enjoyed?
We've been to 90 countries,
Wow.
every single continent, all 7 continents. So have we been overseas? Oh, yes. We have been overseas. And I know the one question we get all the time is, what's your favorite country? And it's really difficult to say that, because there's so many different countries and different environments that we love to visit. But to go to different places like, the very far east, when you're talking about Vietnam, and to really go there, I enjoyed Vietnam. It was hard for me to go to Vietnam because I have friends whose parents or, they were in Vietnam for the war.
For the war.
And so it was really difficult to go there to think about what they were going through. And plus, when we went there, we did actually learn how they actually tortured the Americans there. But it is such a beautiful place, and the people were just so kind, and just so their thing is we don't think about that in the past. We move forward. We keep going forward, and and how modern Vietnam is. So places like that. But I will tell you, it's to go there and to learn and to experience it. And to also, you don't have to compare it with what we do or what we live in, but to actually acknowledge that when we come back, we live in a great country. We
Yeah,
really do. Because as much as I love Vietnam, Vietnam communism.
yeah,
It's communist. They do believe in capitalism, but they're communist.
right.
So, it just always makes me come back to the United States and appreciate what we have here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I know that one of our regulars on our World Edition show, which is our morning Monday through Friday show, is from Bangladesh, and he's really big into wisdom, and he's
Mhm.
an educator from Bangladesh. So I was wondering your take on Bangladesh, because I'm sure Dr. Sharif would love to hear if you've been to Bangladesh and what your reaction to Bangladesh was, because he's always telling us that we should come visit his country and everything like that. And I've yet to go there, even though he's constantly giving us an invitation to come to Bangladesh.
We haven't been to Bangladesh, but we have been to India.
Right,
And of course, that is a neighbor of Bangladesh
Mhm.
right.
and Pakistan, and that history there we got
Nepal
into.
area.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but it was wonderful. We absolutely enjoyed the Indian culture. We enjoyed studying about it. We enjoyed going to different places. We enjoyed the people there.
But what we learned is that when you go to a country like India, Nepal, Vietnam, China, these are different countries. These are different cultures, and when you go over there, you need to accept it.
Yeah.
And some people will say, "Oh, I don't want to go to a certain country because I just can't imagine, this or that." You can't got to get out of that mindset and go in and absorb everything you can and to learn about it, to learn about the people, to understand what they're thinking and what they're doing. And you really will enjoy it a lot more instead of comparing it to what you're used to in the United States.
In
That
other
makes a
words,
lot of sense.
don't go as the ugly American.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely don't go as the ugly American. Speaking of the ugly American and everything like that, I was just wondering because I identify, as you probably could guess from some of the things that I mentioned, primarily even though I'm light complected as African American and all along those lines, but I do have relatives of mine that identify more on the Native American side of our culture and everything like that. So I have a couple of cousins that are very active in the powwow circuit. So I was just wondering, in your travels, have you ever gone and had an opportunity to enjoy a part of culture that isn't necessarily your own culture? Because I do know that sometimes they will welcome others like to visit them during the powwow ceremonies, and of course Kwanzaa is an African American tradition around Christmas, and they will say that it's not just an African American holiday, but it's a holiday for people of all nationalities to come in and enjoy. So I was just wondering, in your own world travel, have you had a chance to enjoy other cultures and their own traditions? Like I said, I know that Native Americans, and I don't know how much
Mhm.
West Coast you've done, but their powwows even here in the in the Southeast, because I know that some of my second cousins live in Florida and everything like that. So I was wondering if you ever had a chance to enjoy some of those cultural
We
celebrations.
We do it all the time. In fact, I don't even want to go to a place if I can't learn like that. In fact, well, I think when we went to Brazil, we went to the Amazon and we got to go deep into the Amazon and really just sit down and talk with the individuals. I mean, they were living off the land. This is deep inside the Amazon.
Right,
Okay. We don't hear about that. And, Americans, what we know as Amazon is what they come up and deliver, right?
right.
No, and this was deep inside the Amazon to really understand how the people live on the Amazon. In fact, on the day of Christmas, we actually went around on a boat, and the native that was taking us around, he was kind of dressed up as Santa Claus, but he actually went
Papa
around.
Noel.
Papa Noel.
Papa
We actually
Noel
went
was his name,
around
rather than Santa
and
Claus.
delivered gifts
Well,
to the children that don't get to really see a lot of outsiders. And you want to know what the most popular gift was for the little boys?
what was it?
A soccer ball, a
A soccer
football.
ball? Football. They wanted that football so they could become the
They,
next Messi or become the next Ronaldo or something like that. So they
that's
wanted to
exactly right.
be the
Maybe we
superstar.
delivered that soccer ball to Ronaldo.
So they wanted
But
that soccer
you
ball
know,
so they could be.
You mentioned the Native Americans. We went to the Crazy Horse Memorial in South Dakota, and it was really very interesting. They have the absolutely best museum
Yes,
that you have ever seen, and
for natives, Native
native,
Americans.
and we really did enjoy going there and looking at the memorial, which, by the way, only has the head and Crazy
The
Horse's
finger.
finger, but they are planning to do his whole body
Well,
along with his hair flowing back,
And the horse too.
and
So
the
it's
horse.
it's in progress. Hopefully in our lifetime we'll be able to see it.
hopefully you'll be able to see it. Is there a part of the country that you haven't been to? I'm gonna get to the world in a second, but is there a part of the country, because there are 50 states, and I know y'all been all over the place and everything, but is there a place that you have not been to, either you or your mother, that is on your bucket list and everything like that? So,
Mhm.
like,
Yes, I bet we have the same answer.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
is it?
I'm not sure.
Oh, Yosemite.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Yosemite,
Right.
and I really want to go. So we're planning to go there. We've been all over California, but we have not been there.
okay.
So I am excited about going there.
Well, one of my coworkers, they just came back from a vacation. I know that the current vacation, which we're in the middle of, and they will end that on tomorrow when we have our retreat. They're I think they're just coming back from New York City and all along those lines. But before that, they and their mother went to California and they saw the redwoods. And as my friend Monet said, those redwoods are really tall. So you hear about how tall they
They're
are.
tall.
They
Tall
are
and
really,
big.
They're big.
they're really big. Because she was like, she's really amazed at the size of those redwood trees and everything like that. Because that was her first time ever seeing them, from my understanding. But it was one of those mother-daughter trips as well. So she went with her mother, and they were both impressed by the redwoods and everything like that. So have y'all seen the redwoods? And were y'all really impressed with the redwoods as much as my coworker was?
Very, very impressed. It's just it's something that you just can't understand until you see it. It's
Right.
one of those things, to see how huge that they are, and to think about how long did this take, to get that large. So
Yeah, okay, I can believe that. Like I said, that friend that I mentioned it with on one of the cruise was from Nevada, and they also spent some time in Arizona and everything like that. But I was wondering, did you ever get a chance to go to the Grand Canyons? Because I know a lot of people are very much excited by the Grand Canyons, and that's another one of those great sites that people forget about. So, what was your impression of the Grand Canyons?
to me, when I first stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon, I just realized how small I really was. You know what I mean? You see how large, this canyon as far as the eye can see. And it's it's hard to even express the words when you're sitting there and you're looking out for the very first time. We hear about it, you see it in papers, you see it in the movies, but to be there and to be on the edge of it is just, to me, outstanding. I do want to go back again to see that.
And even more than the Grand Canyon, we love the Badlands.
Oh,
You know what the Badlands are? Where they have all of the movies that are made in the Badlands and talk
Right.
about Badlands
in
and
South Dakota, actually
and
North Dakota.
and what we do want to do is go to the Teddy Roosevelt Museum and Memorial
Oh.
that is in what is it, Medora?
North, yeah.
North Dakota. Yeah. So that's on
Speaking
our
of North-
bucket list.
Speaking of North Dakota, I remember that when I was at Marquette, there was a young lady. It was one of those summer romances, for lack of a better term, and everything like that. But I remember dating a young lady briefly, and it was briefly, that was from South Dakota, and she was very much into the rodeo culture and all along those lines and everything like that. And then she eventually connected back with her rodeo boyfriend, because I think that I was like the bounce back and everything like that. So I was the bounce back person, and then she went back to her original person. As far as I know, they're still married and probably got 8 or 9 kids for all I know and everything like that. But I was just wondering your take of if you ever got a chance to go to the Dakotas and enjoy that rodeo culture, because I'm also part of a film festival selection committee, and I know one of the films that I saw last year, I don't remember if it was selected or not, but it was about women rodeo riders, and a lot of people forget that there are a number of women rodeo riders
Oh,
that
yeah.
exist in that area and everything like that. So I just wondered, did you ever get a chance to get to any of the rodeos in your travels? And
It's
what
a
was
big thing in Florida.
Yeah, it is.
In
Yeah.
fact, one of our neighbors over here is a barrel rider in one of the rodeos.
Yeah, I think I was kind of raised on rodeo.
Yeah.
We would go to a bunch of them. But I'll tell you, it's really interesting. And we were in Calgary, and they actually had a big festival, a rodeo
Right.
festival there. It's like the biggest in the world.
Right. So that's interesting. That was in Calgary, Canada, and everything like that.
Uh-huh.
So that was there. And I know that another movie that was selected. I remember it was selected. And speaking of Florida, Florida's got a rich circus community and everything like that. So I was wondering, did you ever get a chance to go to any of the traveling circus shows? Because I do remember this movie might have been. It was well before the pandemic, so it might have been 10 years ago and everything like that. But we're talking about the circus culture and how a lot of those circus people are like y'all. They're traveling all the time, but they're traveling from place to place and everything like that, just like the fair people are as well. But I was wondering if you got a chance to enjoy any of the circus traveling that goes on as well.
Well, this is interesting. I have been to a circus, but I actually am also, I live in Tallahassee, and
Mhm.
Tallahassee is the home of Florida State University.
Right,
And I know that people in North Carolina are familiar because we're part of ACC, right?
right, yeah,
But Tallahassee at Florida State, they actually have a circus
Training.
right in the middle of Florida State University. It's kind of right next to the football stadium. And they actually train for the circus. So I had so many friends when I went to school. I had so many friends that were training for the circus.
Trapeze artists
Yeah.
and so forth.
I'm like, I didn't know they went to school for this.
So wait a minute.
It's
So
actually just an
I'm trying to
extracurricular.
understand. So this is actually a degree that you can get at FSU, is you could trade,
No,
or is it?
it's not. It's not really a degree, but you train. You can train for it. Now they may have it now. Back when I went to school, there wasn't a degree, but they actually it's kind of extracurricular type of thing, like band and so on. But they were very serious about that because that was a big deal. And to this day, there is still the circus right in the middle of Florida State University.
Well, that's interesting you say that because I know that like I said, I live in Durham, but in North Carolina State University, there's a lot of people that are trained as veterinarians. It's got one of the largest and best veterinarian
Yeah.
schools in the country and everything like that. So a lot of people will be trained on actual horses because they do have like a horse area out there and a number of other things as well. So I just wondering, is that something that you ever had any interest in as well? Maybe getting trained as a veterinarian or anything like that. So what are your natural careers when you're not traveling, and how do you balance that as well? Because I know one of the reasons that people don't travel is because they're going like, I got a real job. I can't travel all that much because I don't have the time to travel. So how do you deal with that? I know that your mother is 91, so she's probably retired, like my mom is retired, so she can travel whenever she feels like it. Oh, they just disappeared. Hopefully they're going to come back and we'll continue our conversation and everything like that. So I don't know what happened to them. So hopefully they'll come back. But I'm gonna run this commercial in the meantime. So
The difference between thinking and doing and living in the 21st century. They teach us about being a real quarterback-oriented games. We don't have to just use video games and live in the shadows of good things because of them. We grow up with agility far larger and bigger than we are tall. Parents
finish that later. I was just running a brief commercial that was actually about the wonders of teachers and everything like that because I saw that you had bounced off, but I can put that back on later on and everything like that. So they've seen that commercial before thousands of times and everything like that. So it's all about the importance of education. But what I was asking you was about travel, because a lot of the reason people say they don't travel is because one of the cost of travel, even though I know there's a lot of discount travels that you can do as well, and then the nature of how do I get off of my job and everything like that, because a lot of people are, let's be honest, there's a lot of workaholics out there that don't necessarily have their jobs being travel oriented jobs and everything like that. So how do you make the time for travel, and what advice do you give for people that are going like, I'm working too much, I don't have time to travel?
I'm telling you, Mark, that is one of the things that I really hope people will learn from us on, because I travel. I mean, I work all the time. I think about work. I live work. I breathe work, and I work about 50 to 60 hours a week. Now, so how do you have time to travel? I make it a priority. That's what I do. I make it a priority. So we will do maybe 2 to 3 times a year. We always try to do at least one overseas and a couple within the United States. This year, we're not going overseas. We're just staying right here in the United States, but we're going to go back to that. But again, you have to make it a priority. There's always going to be an excuse, or not even excuse. You're not even think of it as an excuse. It's just there are things that are really important, and one of them is family or this or that or work. But you just have to make it a priority, and that's what we chose to do when we did that first trip 3.5 decades ago. We decided that every year we're going to make this a priority, and we did, except for 1 year. And that was the year of COVID. So we didn't get to travel that year. But every year we travel, and we make it a priority. I'm in the world of, I will say politics, because I do work with the legislature, not for I used to work for the Senate, but I work with the Florida legislature, and I am in the world of behavioral health. Mm-hmm. So we make sure that we have behavioral health services in the state of Florida for people in need of it. And so that's what I do. But I spend a lot of hours, and my mother can tell you that. I spend a lot of hours at my job. But we do make it a priority. Now, don't let my mom fool you, because she may be in retirement age. She can run circles around me. She is constantly working at her laptop. She used to be a medical writer. You have, 22 medical books? Mm-hmm. But now she does a lot of our marketing. Mm. That's what my mother does. So she's there at 5 o'clock in the morning while I'm still sleeping.
No, I'm amazed at what some of the people that are so-called seniors are doing, even though in my 60s, I'm technically in that category as well. But I know that my dad's better half, because like I said, mom's been divorced from dad for decades, because they got divorced when I was in college and everything like that. But dad's been with his lady love for about 25 years and everything like that. But she is very much into dance. She was a dancer, Linda Bellins, but she's also a dance critic, and she even does these morning dance routines. And she was even doing one with some friends of hers around Say Her Name and everything like that. But she's still very much active as a dancer even to this day. And I think that she's got to be, dad's 86. She's at least probably in her late 70s or early 80s. I'm thinking probably early 80s, but still very much active as a dancer.
For her.
And along those lines. So I'm just always amazed in that. But just really quickly, this is for both of you and your mother. Because one of the things I talk about on this show quite often in the online dinner party is this notion of a work-life balance and everything like that. I don't know that I ever really have that much work-life balance, because I've got more than one job. I've got like about 3 of them total, probably, that are consistent and everything like that. But how do you manage a work-life balance? There's probably a reason that I'm still single and don't have a wife or kids and everything like that. But how do you manage that work-life balance, the two of you?
I don't know, but you talk about when I retired from actually teaching the school system. I was also college professor of at 4 different universities, as well as a medical writer. So I have been very busy in the years of quote retirement, because it never gets old, and I love it. I can hardly wait to get up in the morning and to get to work.
But there's really not anything wrong with it, as long as you can learn to balance it. You talk about you're single, so am I. I am too. But and I work all the time. But you do, when it comes to travel, again, we do make that a priority, because if you don't make it a priority, you will just push it aside, and there's going to be another year that goes by without getting out of your comfort zone, getting out of your job, getting out of your daily stressors. We really talk a lot about this. I mean, in the world of behavioral health or mental health, I'm in this world, it's extremely important you get out of your comfort zone, because we get so used to sitting in our couches, sitting in our chairs and turning on the news or turning on your TV and just watching that. And we do that day in and day out and day in and day out. And what we try to do, and that gets you old. That really gets you old. And so what we try to do is really encourage people to get out of that. And if you can't people come to me and say, listen, Aunt Natalie, I can't afford this. I can't go on a big trip. I overseas, or I can't fly to New York City. You don't have to. Just do a 50-mile radius around where you live. Draw a circle and look to see what's in that area right there where you live. You were talking about how you got this incredible museum and this beautiful place. We drive by those every single day and we don't even see them.
No,
You know, and we encourage people to do that.
no, I agree with you, because that's one of the things that we talk about even at the museum that I work at. There is literally an apartment complex behind me, because like I said, it was an old converted church, and I have had conversations with some of the people, and I tell them some of the things that we have in that building, which includes a monthly poetry event, and includes a regular weekly dance class, and includes a number of other things. But sometimes it's so obvious what it's there, or we have a perception of what it is because it used to be a church, so it still has some of that church facade, that we make assumptions, and we know that making assumptions is a bad thing to do and everything like that, because you might miss some great opportunities and some great things. I mentioned that Duke Gardens, the bus, because I get around by mass transit, the bus goes by there all the time, and I keep saying that one of these times that I'm not rushing to work, I'm gonna get off the bus and actually walk around the Duke Gardens, because the Duke Gardens has all these fantastic botanical flowers from around the world and everything like that. So it's a beautiful botanical garden, and there are a number of botanical gardens, not just here in North Carolina, but throughout the United States, that I would urge people to go to, because they can be very pretty and all along those lines. But just like really quickly along that same line, I was curious, because you mentioned it, and we talk about it here on the network quite often, since you're in the field of behavioral science and everything like that. We can be our own worst enemies. I just mentioned to people that make assumptions and everything like that, but we oftentimes talk on this show about the imposter syndrome. And I know that there have been jobs that I have not gone for. There have been romances that I have not gone for. There have been other kinds of opportunities that I've not gone for, because I was having that little nagging head conversation with myself. So by the time I got done with the conversation, whatever I was thinking about doing might have left the opportunities. Like, we'll use the jobs as an example. I might have been thinking, hey, I should apply for that job, or I should apply for that job. But you keep having that conversation, and by the time you finally talk yourself into the job and you go ask the people, they're like, oh, we didn't tell you that job was filled. So it's that whole nagging notion of the internal conversations and everything like that. So how have the two of you dealt with that internal conversation? Because I love hearing from my guests as to how they have dealt with that internal conversation, because we all have it. I don't care whether it's a romantic pursuit or a job pursuit or a life pursuit. We all have that nagging conversation.
I would say 2 words: just go.
Just go.
You know, just do it. Sometimes we go in, and I think we just start talking to ourselves, and
What you were saying.
yeah, just it's like, why are we doing this? Or, you know, and it's because of fear.
Right.
It's either fear of you're not going to get that job, or they're going to reject you, or whatever. Get out of that. And listen, I'm my worst enemy. I'll do that too. But you have to learn how to get out of that and just do it.
Right.
Just go for it. Because what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
The
Okay,
worst
they
thing
may say no, or
Yeah.
you may not get that job, but you may get something better.
Right, exactly. Something better might come. I want to come back to travel, because there is a popular event that is very popular here in North Carolina. At least it used to be very popular, but it's based in my other area, because I went to school in Marquette, which is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and everything like that. But a lot of people are fascinated by motorcycles and automobiles, and the Harley Davidson Museum is there in that area and everything like that. So I was just wondering, did you ever get a chance to enjoy any of the motorcycle culture? Because I know there's even an active motorcycle culture in South Carolina, down in Myrtle Beach, and of course there's an active one even in some of our lake communities here in North Carolina. So I was just wondering if you ever got a chance to attend any of those museums, because I know there used to be a popular, I think it was a Harley Davidson rally that existed in our state capitol and everything like that. So I was wondering if you ever got a chance to enjoy some of those motorcycle or car activities, because we're also a big NASCAR state here in North Carolina.
Oh yeah, you are. You know, in Florida
Daytona.
we have Daytona, so it's a big deal here in Florida.
It is fascinating to go there because it's so high tech.
Mhm.
You think they're just running around? No, it is so high tech, and they have, at least in Daytona, they have a hospital there in the center, so that if there are any injuries or any accidents, that they can bring them in almost immediately. But it's really interesting, and go to see behind the scenes. I was given the privilege of doing that one time as a journalist, and really enjoyed going and seeing. Actually, hey, whenever it goes around, it's they don't count tally it up.
Mhm.
It's all done by via computer.
Wow.
Very high tech.
Yes,
And
very high
even
tech.
and even those places, if you haven't gone, you don't have to go when they're racing, because a lot of the racetracks, and especially the one in Daytona Beach, it's like a museum itself. When I went there, a friend of mine worked for NASCAR. And so I got to go there and I got to see all of these different things, the old cars,
Right.
the outfits that they were wearing, things like that, which is just so unique to see that you won't see anywhere else.
No, it's unique to see, and you won't see it anyplace else. And people forget that NASCAR was partially built on the moonshine industry, because it was actually people that were trying to run away and everything like that. That's actually part of the history of NASCAR, was that they were actually people that were trying to run the moonshine and running away from the cops. So that whole Dukes of Hazzard lifestyle, it was very much true. Now, one of my other coworkers, not Nick, who I mentioned earlier, but Kim Calhoun, she actually got a chance this year to go. I think it was on her bucket list. It's on my bucket list. I've yet to go. And part of it is I read the book Fear and Loathing at the Kentucky Derby. So I want to go to the Kentucky Derby one of these years and everything like that. So I was wondering if y'all have had the pleasure of going either to the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont Stakes, which I think is still coming up, or the Preakness and everything like that. I was wondering if y'all have ever had the pleasure of going to any of these horse races, because I know the Kentucky Derby has definitely been on my bucket list for years.
I lived in Louisville, Kentucky for 2 years, and we would go out in the mornings before the Derby, and you get to see the horses run around the track. But you'd have to start very, very early, because that is when they were racing them and running them around the track, and it was really very interesting. I think the one that won that year was Needles.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a
right.
long time
That
ago.
was a long time ago. Yes,
I mean, we are actually right now,
the
as we
horse
speak,
country.
we're in Ocala, Florida, which is called horse country. I mean,
Right.
so there are a lot of horses, a lot of thoroughbreds that are trained here in Ocala. So you'll see during the Kentucky Derby, normally more than half are actually trained or are born here in Ocala, Florida. So horse racing while I'm not a gambler, horse racing is kind of in our bloods, because we were just raised around it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And speaking of horse racing, I know that in North Carolina, I mentioned that there's the Cape Hatteras, the famous lighthouse, but also off of the coast of North Carolina is a famous island, and I can't think of the name of the island, but it is known for having thoroughbred horses that run off of it and everything along those lines. So I was just wondering if you've had a chance to visit that. I think that there have been a couple of movies that were centered on that island, because there are horses that are I think it's off the island, off the coast of North Carolina. I don't think it's off the coast of South Carolina, but it's off of one of those two coasts. But it's
Yeah.
definitely
Are you talking about the wild horses?
the
Wild
wild
horses.
horses. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Cumberland Island.
Well,
Yeah, we were
we
there
went
just
to
recently.
Cumberland Island, which is in Georgia, southern Georgia area.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they have the wild horses there, all up and down that coast. The North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, even going into like North Florida there. You will have areas there where the barrier islands,
Right.
there'll be places to have they'll have those wild horses.
Chincoteague Island, Assateague, and Cumberland Island all have wild horses.
Mhm.
Probably some more of them. In fact, we have a place here called Payne's Prairie that is on the interior of Florida that has wild horses.
Wow, so it's got wild horses there as well and everything like that. What are your thoughts around Cape Cape Hatteras at the lighthouses? Because there are a number of famous lighthouses. It's not just the ones here in North Carolina, like Cape Hatteras, but there are a number of famous lighthouses, including some that have ghosts. So what is your take on the lighthouses, and have you visited any of the famous lighthouses?
We've visited many of the lighthouses all up and down the coast. And we really enjoy that, especially the history of it. And of course, if they've had ghosts, of course we
And
did.
they nearly all have a ghost.
They, I'm telling you, all of them have some type of story where there's going to be a ghost. But yes, when we go to places like that, whether it's in New England or down in, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, St. Augustine has an incredible, beautiful lighthouse. We always want to do whatever we can to get to that lighthouse if we can go to it.
That makes sense. And by the way, we have a question from the audience, Liberty Twitcher, who's a regular person on Twitch that listens to us regularly. But he was saying, what would they say are the top 3 overlooked hidden gem travel places to see in the USA? And if I remember correctly, I don't think Liberty Twitcher is from here. I think he's from overseas, but I could be wrong. But he's asking, what are the top 3 hidden gems that people should be considering to look at if they're thinking about traveling to the US?
I would say what we just talked about, Cumberland Island.
One of them. Number 1.
Yeah, and about Cumberland Island, it has an old mansion, but it's kind of fallen a little bit. But that's where JFK Jr. was married.
Okay.
Was on that island, and it's very it's out of the way. It's very difficult to get to. There's no bridge to go to it. You have to go there by a ferry.
One time goes over, and if you don't get it coming back, you have to spend the night there with the mosquitoes and the snakes. Yeah.
Wow.
I'd say the second one would be right at the tip of Florida. There is a place, a little tiny group of islands called the Dry Tortugas.
Okay.
And so you have to go to Key West. There's 2 ways to get to the Dry Tortugas. It's a national park, but it's the least visited national park. You have to get there either by ferry, which is a 3-hour ride over very rough waters. They do give you a barf bag. So if so that means you're probably most likely going to be doing that. Or you can go by seaplane. And we went by seaplane because we wanted to see the shipwrecks down there in the water as you fly over to the fort. There's a fort there. Okay. And so it's just out of this world to go there.
That would be the second one from your who are these people that are coming in that are asking questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Second one.
The second one.
The third.
The third one is in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to let Natalie tell you about that.
So there's a place in Alaska that if you're going to Denali, and a lot of people, they get off the cruise line at the port, they'll get on a train, like one of those with the domes, the glass domes, and they'll go up to Denali area. And on the way to Denali, there's this little tiny town called Talkeetna. And Talkeetna, not very many people have heard of it, but it's very interesting because the people, talk about politics. They elected their mayors, just like every town elects their mayor. But their mayor's a little different, or was a little different. The mayor was an elected cat.
Oh, I did hear about this. I did hear about the cat that was elected.
His name was Stubbs, and he was the mayor for 2 decades. He went to ribbon cuttings. Mm-hmm. He was at the council meetings.
No scandals.
No scandals, no broken promises. What party do you think that cat was?
I don't know. Was the cat a Republican or a Democrat?
It was a Democrat.
A Democrat. It was a Democrat. A Democrat. It was a,
so that's, I say that because that's just kind of the mentality of this town. They're just it's just kind of the cutest little town, very quirky. They do things, in Alaska, in that area there, during December, it's almost dark all the time.
No daylight ever.
Well,
no daylight ever.
Well, speaking of quirky, we
they
do
have fun.
Well, and we have fun here even in Durham because we have a couple of quirky things. I have a friend of mine that was on the show recently, and she is a burlesque dancer. So I think she was on about 3 episodes ago and everything like that. But we have 2 interesting things that y'all would find fascinating because before the pandemic, so I think it was 2015 or 2016. I got to remember the year that we did it. We actually married our towns because they made this whole thing. It was an activity that was created here in Durham. And I think other cities, like even some in the West Coast, picked it up and ran with it as well. So they did a whole event called Marry Durham, and you were supposed to take vows as to ways that you would improve the city, like being nice to your neighbors, picking up litter, doing things like that. And it was
Uh-huh.
actually had vows done by an actual minister and everything. 'Cause I actually knew the minister. It's a friend of mine, Carl Kennedy, but they did a whole wedding vow, and it's called Mary Durham. And then there's another event where they have some of the members of the LGBT community do an event called the Beaver Pageant. So they would dress up as like a space beaver, and I mean like a little animal and everything like that, and they'll do it as a pageant, and they'll have the people dress up and design and everything. And I think that's held in the month of first week in June. So they just did it last month and everything like that. So it's right around the time of the beginning of Pride. So definitely that's. There, by the way, this Liberty Twitter said, "Thanks. I have brought the Kindle version of their Have a Love Affair with the USA. Discover the USA's beauty, humor, and hidden gems." So I'm glad that Liberty
Thank
Twitter
you.
Thank
just
you.
brought a copy of the book. So that is amazing that they are supporting you and all along those lines. So that was just great that they were able to do that and everything like that. Now I know when I've done some travel, one of the things that I did not like all that much, even when I went on my one cruise, is some of the, and like I said, I get around by mass transit. Some of the transportation was a little bit scary. I'm not gonna lie and everything like that, because I know when I went on, I think it was either Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands, you would be going up the mountain in like those little kind of rickety buses and everything like that. You'd be looking down, and you're always afraid that like just get me to the top, because I'm not too comfortable with the shakiness of this particular bus and everything. Because there's a lot of people on the bus, and you're on a mountain that's kind of like narrow and everything like that. So I don't know if that's something that y'all experience even on some of your foreign trips, where you're going on like these kind of like rickety kind of vehicles, whatever they might be, or whatever.
We
And you're
have.
going like, please get me to the top, or whatever the destination is, because you're a little bit on the nervous side.
No way.
That, and also we went to, when we were in Nepal, we wanted to see Mount Everest.
Mhm.
And so we weren't going to climb Mount Everest, but we wanted to see it. And so we took a flight on Air Buddha.
Buddha Air.
Oh, it's Buddha
Buddha
Air.
Air.
Right, Buddha Air. And I am telling you, I wasn't sure we were going to make it down.
And after, a couple of months afterwards, they did have an accident, and several people were killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
things like that do happen.
Yeah, they do.
what advice would you give to people about being safe on travels? Because I do know that's the other reason that people sometimes say that they don't want to go on trips, because they are going to a area that they're not comfortable with. I know that, I can't remember if Liberty Twitter is from that area or not, but I know some people are scared to go to the land down under around Australia, because Australia has some animals that aren't exactly nice to people and everything like that, be that snakes or bugs, or even I think there might even be scorpions in parts of that area. So what do you say about travel and the safety around travel?
I think safety is a really, that's a real serious issue. First of all, if you're going overseas, you always need to travel to look at the Department of State's website. There is a part of it where you can determine how safe is the country that you're going to. And then there's like a rating system. But Australia, I had somebody just tell me the other day ago that they wanted to go to Australia, but they're not going to because of the spiders. No, don't do that. Don't ever think that. You're just watching some reality show or something. I don't know. But no, that is not the case. You should never do that just because you've seen that or heard that. I never seen any spiders. I never saw the spiders down there.
And that's kind of like, don't come to Florida because
Alligators.
of the alligators
Yeah.
down
Right.
here, or boa constrictors, or pythons.
I mean, while you may have them, you're not going to be confronted with them.
no.
Now, safety is an issue. My take on that is this. When you go overseas,
Mhm.
don't look like an American. Don't wear your NC State t-shirt or North Carolina, University of North Carolina. Don't do any of that. They don't need to know where you went to college or what you like
Or your
what
Florida Gator outfit.
Don't do that. I would do it. No, I'm joking. No, so you don't do those type of things. What you want to do is, you don't want to be a target, and being a target is wearing those type of shirts. Just looking like a tourist. Now, sometimes it's really tough to do because you're not going to. When I go to India, clearly I'm not going to look like that. That's okay. They're going to respect you. They're going to know that. But, don't don't go with jewelry. Don't wear your diamonds. Do not wear gold. Do not do that, because it could be as simple as somebody come by and grab it and take off with it. So you don't want to put yourself in a situation like that. Your cell phones, don't be looking at them, constantly on your maps and stuff like that. Put your cell phone away. That's important. This is $1,000 to them, and that's a lot of money to somebody in, a country, a third world country. So you just don't want to put yourself in a situation like that. It's just really common sense. That's what it is, and just not to go over there and really look like an American.
And one thing you've got to remember, that when you go to another country, you are not an American citizen. You are not protected by American laws. You are under their laws. And some of the laws may not make sense, and you may not like it. And if you get in trouble by doing certain things, and are arrested, and many of them you may not even know the reason. We had some friends that almost got arrested in France because they didn't know how to operate the credit card in the gasoline tank.
They thought they paid for it and they didn't, and the police came after them. And luckily they didn't get put in jail. But there's things that you may not even know. For example, if you go to Singapore, you're not allowed to chew gum in Singapore. I mean, so there could be, you're not allowed to jaywalk in Singapore. So you just really, before you go to different countries, you just want to do a little bit of research, find out what you're going to, some of the laws there, and so that you're not going to end up in their jail.
Because the embassy cannot help you. The only thing they can do is to call an attorney for you and to contact your people at home. But they cannot get you out of jail.
Yeah, and I think that that famous basketball player learned that and everything like that, because they spent jail in Russia and everything like that, even though they're out in the league and all along those lines. But they were there in jail for, I want to say, about 1.5 or 2 years or something like that. But I know they were there for a while and everything like that. Y'all were talking about Florida and the unusual things. Y'all do not know this because I don't always talk about it, but I worked at the Boca Raton newspaper for a while, and I do remember, speaking of unusual animals, that one of the stories that I covered was a manatee that got stuck in somebody's house that was living there on the coast. So the manatee had come in from the island and literally got stuck in the I think like in the carport area and everything like that. So that was one of the news stories that I do remember covering with this manatee.
That was great.
Yeah, Florida has some unusual
stories.
Yes.
Yeah. They got some unusual stories. I just remember covering that. I remember covering a cancer lady that was doing some cancer haircuts because they were trying to raise money for her, and I think she was having some sort of juvenile cancer. But this was like back in the late 80s and everything like that. But I still remember that manatee story and everything like that. You mentioned those unusual laws like in Singapore. What are some other unusual laws? Because Nick is a pension attorney, one of the founders and everything like that, that people might be surprised to know about. Like I did not know about the chewing gum. I had heard about jaywalking in not just Singapore, but in other countries as well. But what are some of the unusual laws that you heard about that people might want to consider, whether that's in an African nation, an Asian nation, or even in the oceanic areas as well? So what are some unusual laws that you have heard about?
Thailand has a law that you can't speak ill of their king or their government, because that is illegal.
And you won't get arrested if you're hurt.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a very unusual law and everything like that. What about in Rome? Any unusual laws that maybe the Vatican or other people have that you weren't aware of and everything like that? Or any unusual laws in Italy or any of the European countries?
The times that we were in the Vatican, it was so crowded. You wouldn't have an opportunity to do anything bad. However, when you go over the U.S., for some reason, just the way you look, they can spot you. I don't know if it's a type of shoes you wear.
Well, Americans, we like jeans. We like to wear tennis shoes, and a lot of people over, in European countries, they don't wear that. So all of a sudden we're kind of spotted. But there's so many different laws, and they're all different. They're all different.
Every state is different.
And every country is different. So it's one of those things you just have to go and you just do a little bit of research before you go, just to make sure if you're going out on your own. Now, remember, if you're going with a tour company,
They help
you're a
you.
little bit safer
Uh-huh.
because they're going to say, okay, guys, know this. You're not supposed to be chewing gum. If you're in Singapore, you're not supposed to be chewing gum, and this will happen. So they'll help you. If you're on your own, that's a different story. Then you
Yeah.
need to do your research. That's the one thing I like to tell people. If you're on a tour, if you're on a cruise, or if you're on a river boat, they're going to tell you more about it before you get into that country. But if you're going there on your own, you need to do your research.
And the big thing about it, sometimes in the USA, we have laws that are different from state to state. For example, what is it? Open carry,
Gun laws.
gun laws. Florida is an open carry state, and you go out of the boundaries of Florida. That's not the way it is.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah, can't do that. And the laws do vary from state to state. I was just talking yesterday, or maybe a couple of days ago, that they just lifted one of our laws here in North Carolina just for the 4th of July and everything like that, because they are very strict about hunting and fishing rules and everything like that. But because it was the 4th of July, they were actually allowing people to fish without having the fishing license and the fishing requirements. So it was basically like for that one weekend, they were opening up fishing to anybody. So you didn't have to have your fees, and there wasn't a lot of enforcement just because it was the 4th of July. So they decided to give people a break for the 4th of July weekend and everything like that. So that was one of those things that people don't always think about. Now, I remember when I was a youngster and going to traveling even in the States and everything like that, there was this whole notion, and I don't know if they even are out there anymore, but should people be trying to convert their money to what used to be called traveler checks and everything like that? Or is traveler checks a thing of the past that people don't even deal with anymore like that? I remember when I was growing up in the 70s, you had this notion of you would convert to traveler's checks and everything like that. But I don't even know if that's a thing anymore.
No,
it is not.
now.
It is not. What we do, we may be a little different than other people. We do take our American dollars. But what we do is we'll take 20s. I don't like to take 100s. You never take 100. You take 20s, and then you take 10s, you take 5s, and a bunch of ones. I will bring about 21s, probably even more. And the reason is this, because when you go to a foreign country, now it depends on the country, sometimes they will want their currency. So that means you'll go to a local bank there to get that currency, to get their currency. But I will tell you, it's very rare, but a lot of countries accept American dollars. And really, I can get away, especially if you're going to like South America, you can get away with giving out a lot of $1 bills for tips. I mean, and I'm talking about $1 bills. So that's the reason why I bring a lot of $1 bills, because our $1 bill is worth a lot more than their money down in their particular country. So that's what we do. Now, if we do have to change it, we'll do that. But really, I just do it for smaller items, like maybe a coffee or some food, that type of thing. Because usually, if you're going to a place and if you're going to a store, they'll accept a credit card. And so we'll take our credit cards, because it's much safer to do that instead of having, a lot of money, a lot of cash on you.
That makes sense. I know you mentioned we definitely talked about the Asian countries, but I was just wondering, there's 2 continents we haven't covered, and you kind of alluded to one of them. I have a cousin that loves going to, I believe it's Costa Rica. I don't think it's Colombia. I think it's Costa Rica, even though I have a show here on the network that the young lady is from Colombia and everything like that. And I know that there are a lot of people that are big fans of the DR. Actually, I think that's where Cousin John likes to go, is the Dominican Republic, now that I think about it and everything like that. I'm convinced that he has a secret family that he hasn't told me about it. Yes, I am joking about it and everything like that, but I don't have any proof and everything like that. But I was just wondering, what is your thoughts around some of the South American countries that you have really enjoyed going to? Because I even have a friend that was thinking about buying some property in Costa Rica. I know that another friend of mine is a professor at North Carolina Central University, but he used to take his students a couple of years down to Belize, and he said great things about Belize and everything like that. So what are some of the South American countries that you were really impressed with?
We love love South America, Central America. We used to go pretty much every Christmas because it's warmer down there. And
Their winter.
instead of winter,
Our winter
yeah.
is their summer. Yeah.
Right. And so we go down there. We really enjoy all of those countries. I particularly enjoyed Colombia. Really love Colombia. It's beautiful. Bolivia, that is beautiful. Chile, just Argentina, just incredible countries. And Brazil. Just all of them. We've really enjoyed going down there. In fact, I think we've been to every country in South and Central America
Except Venezuela.
Venezuela and the couple of those countries right there at Venezuela on the east side of it. But otherwise, I go down there because I enjoy it.
Now, I've heard good things about Paraguay because I know some people that are Paraguayan, and they told me that it's a very beautiful country as well. And I know they were involved in the World Cup and everything like that. Are there any African countries that you are big fans of? I've got a friend of mine that is in town. They actually run one of our Kenyan restaurants, so they're in town until Black August in the park, which will be in August, and visiting their kids and grandkids and everything like that, and then they'll go back to Kenya. So I've heard good things about Kenya. I've heard good things about Ghana. Of course, I've heard good things about South Africa, particularly in its beauty and all along those lines. Maybe not so much its history, but definitely its beauty and all in that space. So I just wonder, are there any African countries? I've got another friend of mine whose family is from Liberia, so he goes regularly back to Liberia and stuff like that. So what are some of the African countries that you have really enjoyed?
We've been ones across the top of Africa, Morocco, Tunisia. We've been to South Africa, and it is just gorgeous.
It really is.
What we haven't been to is those
Central.
that are in Central, like Nigeria and Gambia and those countries. We have not been there.
But if you have any good ideas, let us know because we're planning them.
Okay, well, I'll have to.
Because we want to go. We want to go like
friend.
4 or 5 countries at one time.
Yeah, I have to talk to my friend because I know he's got family. Actually, they may even be part of the royalty there in Liberia. So I know he goes back regularly to Liberia. And I've actually got a friend that just came back recently from a cruise recently, like a few days ago. Before the cruise, they had gone to Ghana. So they went to 2 trips this year and everything like that. So they've said good things about Ghana and everything. And then, like I said, I do have friends that have got family in Kenya and everything. So yeah, I can find some good advice as to where you should go and everything. But I know that one of the shows we do on Thursday is Coco McMillan's show, which is about music. And she used to sing with Gerald Levert when Gerald Levert was living and everything. But one of her good friends is actually, I think they still own the restaurant in Morocco, but I've heard really good things about Morocco as a country. So what was your take on Morocco and everything like that, since you did visit Morocco? But I think that Fadia, I think that's her name. Fadia is the lady that Coco is friends with, that her family, they used to own a restaurant. I think it was a restaurant/music club, but I think they still have the restaurant. I'm not sure about the music club part of it and everything like that. But what did you think of Morocco?
We enjoyed Morocco, and I'll tell you, Morocco is like one of the hottest countries. I mean, hot heat-wise, yes, but popular-wise. People are really wanting to go to Morocco. It is probably one of the friendlier countries, especially in that northern part of Africa. But it is very popular. You'll see a lot of movie sets are there because they'll do a lot of movies, but they'll do them out of Morocco because Morocco has really kind of made a name for themselves. In fact, and I'm not even sure if you even know this, but the hotel we stayed at in Tangier was the hotel that was in the movie The Mummy.
Okay.
The very first movie called Mummy, with Brandon Fraser, and that was in Tangier. So it's just a lot of fun to go there, to go to the Casbah, to walk through that, to see all that. It's a different culture. It's different culture. I'm not used to seeing, chickens hanging upside down, things like that. But that's all a part of travel. That's all a part of learning.
You're not used to seeing chickens hanging upside down, but I'm going to tell you something that I was not used to, because I didn't go this year, but I went last year to the podcast conference, which was held in Miami. I think it's held every year in Miami and everything like that. So I was in Miami, and I'm sorry, I love Miami. I used to work in Boca Raton, but I was not used to just chickens kind of like just free flowing around and everything like that. Because I remember going from the hotel that we were staying at to go into where they were staying. I think it was the Intercontinental or something like that, where the
Uh-huh.
concert took place. But I just remember walking past, like even one of those parking lots, and the chickens were there like cats and dogs. They were just sitting there
And you
chilling.
don't
and
touch
everything like
them.
that.
They are the same thing in Key West.
Oh yeah, Key West.
If you want to,
Mhm.
if you want to have a great time, it's great to be a chicken in Key West, and I guess in Miami too.
Because you're not allowed to touch it.
Tease them or
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not allowed to touch it. Well, I also went because I am a fan of blues music. I've been a fan of blues music for decades. Was involved with the Blues Festival for out of its 30-year existence, probably about 25 or 22 of those years, if not more, and everything like that. But I did go to the International Blues Challenge in Memphis, Tennessee. Wish I had kept it, but somehow in moving from point A to point B, I lost the scavenger hunt trophy that I won. So if anybody is listening and y'all have a copy of a replica, I will gladly take the replica because I don't know where my trophy went and everything like that. But I did win the scavenger hunt. But I also remember that in Memphis, I think it's at the Flamingo. It's one of the hotels. They've got the birds that are there as well that are just kind of like walking around Memphis and everything like that. So they've got in Memphis also some of these unusual,
Yeah.
kind of like hanging out. So
It's the ducks. The
The
ducks.
Ducks in the Peabody Hotel.
Yeah.
it's the Peabody. It was the Peabody
Yeah,
Hotel.
those in Memphis.
Oh, they disappeared on me again. Hopefully they're going to come back. They came back last time. But yes, it was the Peabody Hotel that I was trying to remember and everything like that. I'm going to play a shorter video and hopefully they'll come back.
It's
and everything
time
like
for
that.
Bible or Babble. Gather round for your new favorite show. If you little work, show 'em what you know. Let's go. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go. All in every saint, we gon' put you to the test. See who know that B.I.B. a little best. Bible or Babble. It's Bible. Let's go.
Yeah.
That was actually from a travel trip as well. That was actually from Coco's show and everything
Oh.
like that. And I don't know if they still have that contest, but it was a contest where they were doing like a religious cruise and they had created this game show and everything. But the game show was based on the Bible. So they would ask you a question and you had to decide whether it was actually something from the Bible or whether it was something that was just Babel and everything like that. So they had that game show running on the cruise for a number of years. Mario Steele, who was featured in that commercial, was the one that created it. I need to call Coco and see if they're still doing it, but I know they were doing it as of a few years ago and everything like that. And while I read the Bible, something what I need to do better with that, I would probably not do all that well in that test. But yeah, Peabody is what I was trying to remember. But yes, Peabody's got the ducks and everything, and of course they've also got the Elvis Museum, and they've got a lot of other famous things, including some things around black magic culture that exists in Memphis and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of really cool things that you can find in Memphis. If you haven't been to Memphis, I want to go back to Memphis. I've yet to go.
Yeah.
I keep saying that I have friends that have been to New Orleans during Mardi Gras, but I've yet to go to New Orleans, even though I've got one of our co-hosts that lives in the New Orleans area when she's not teaching in DC, meaning that her parents are there in New Orleans area. But I've yet to go to New Orleans. So New Orleans is on my bucket list and everything like that. But I've got to get
Wow.
to
I
New Orleans. Have you been
love
to
New
Memphis?
Orleans.
Have you been to New Orleans?
Oh, several times. Sometimes we even would go to the Superdome because, Florida State was playing football there for, whatever. But yes, just love New Orleans.
Yeah. What about Memphis? Have you been to Memphis, and do you really love
Yes.
Memphis?
Memphis, enjoyed Memphis a lot. We really pretty much stayed downtown in Memphis, didn't
Yes.
we? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And got to walk around Memphis. We went to Elvis's home there, which was real interesting.
Yeah.
So Memphis is really interesting town. I love it.
Have you been to Nashville? Because I know Nashville is very much of a music town as well. Matter of fact, one of our former hosts that used to have a show here, Alexandria May, she's originally from South Africa, and I think she's still back in South Africa. She won the South African equivalent of the Idol and everything like that. And now she's also spent time back and forth because she is country music influence between Nashville and South Africa. So she's definitely been to Nashville a few times. But and she's a young lady. She's probably in her late 20s or early 30s now, because she was a young lady when we started this network and might have been in her mid 20s at that time. So I'm thinking she's probably pushing in her 30s now and everything like that. So what is your take on Nashville?
Love Nashville. It's probably one of my most exciting towns to go to. You know, what's interesting about Nashville that now is it's kind of what they call it's not the honeymooners, but it's a lot of the girls before they get married, they all go there, and it's like one big party. So it's becoming known as that. So Nashville, it's a lot of country music and stuff like that if you love country music, but it's much more than that. There's a lot of history in
A
Nashville.
lot of culture there because that is where they have the Parthenon. They have an actual replica in Centennial Park of the Parthenon that is in Athens, and it is really very interesting. Very intriguing to go, as well as the history of Vanderbilt University is quite interesting. The guy wanted to come and help the Southerners out. Vanderbilt did, and so they formed this university.
There's one thing about Nashville that you need to know about that we don't know anything about, but I don't know why we're not studying it. It's where the vote happened that women could vote now.
Wow.
It happened in Nashville in the Tennessee legislature with a Representative Byrne. His name is Byrne, and it was his mother. He was going to vote the opposite way, and it was up to him, and it was really up to Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, if it was going to get ratified. And so it was really up to this one guy named Harry Byrne. And it was the mother who wrote a letter to him saying, son, you do the right thing. You vote the right way. And that right way was to vote in favor to allow women to actually vote. And that's what happened in Tennessee and Nashville.
And we have that story in our book, Have a Love Affair with the USA. In fact, that is one of the things that we like to do, is to find really interesting stories about different cultures, about different people.
Unsung heroes.
Our book is not a travel guide, although we do have some things that might help people make a decision about traveling. But,
well, I got an interesting story for you that you may not know, and I just learned this story myself from a person that's writing a fiction book and is based here in the area. So his name is Mark, but he does his with a K, and I'm trying to remember his last name, but he's been coming to my Cultural Arts Center and everything like that because he's doing some research and wants to talk to some people that might have been around in the early 1900s or the late 1800s and everything like that, because he's doing like I think it's a murder kind of novel and everything. But one of the things that he found out that people did not realize, but it made sense to me, is I said that the place that I work at has got stained glass. It's got beautiful stained glass. One of the stained glasses that is probably the most prominent stained glass is that of Mr. Duke, because Mr. Duke, the founder of Duke University, gave money to the folks that were creating the Black Wall Street. So he kind of like had a ego moment. Some people would say there was a Trump or a Biden moment, depending on who you are a fan of or not a fan of, and everything like that. But he had one of those ego moments. So he said that I will give you money and I'll donate money to help you build this church. I just want the most prominent stained glass up there. So he has the most prominent stained glass, even more prominent than the angels and Jesus Christ himself. I think there are two stained glasses of Jesus, but he has the one at the top and all along those lines. But this Mark guy was telling me, which I did not know until about maybe a month and a half or 2 months ago, is that at some point, Mr. Duke went up to New York City to recruit some, and a lot of times we think of the Jewish population as being the quote unquote stereotypical rich Jew and everything like that, but there was a lot of poor Jewish people that lived in New York. So he actually went up to New York to recruit some of these Jewish folks to come down to work on the tobacco fields and the textile mills in North Carolina. So he actually went up there and brought them down to work at the mills. And I knew that as part of Black Wall Street, there is a famous barber that cut a lot. I got to see my barber either tomorrow or Friday. But there's a famous barber that was one of the founders of the local Black Wall Street. There are a number of Black Wall Streets throughout the country, including one there in Rosewood in Florida, and the one at Wall Street in Central Park, and of course the one in Tulsa and everything. But what I did not know is I knew he had 3 barbershops, and I couldn't figure out why he had 3 barbershops. Because I knew he had a barbershop for his white customers, meaning Mr. Merrick. I knew he had a barbershop for his black customers, but then I couldn't figure out what the 3rd barbershop was. So my new theory, and like I said, I am partially a historian as well, and I don't have conclusive proof. So if anybody's watching this that has family from that time and everything like this, is that I know that there is also class differences. It's not just race differences. So my theory for the 3rd barbershop is that was for the poor white customers, which would have been the Jewish customers and everything like that. Because I imagine that Mr. Duke didn't want to get his hair cut at the same place that the poor people were getting their hair cut at and everything like that. So that's my new theory, is that he probably said him set up a 3rd barbershop, but not based on race, but based on class.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah,
And
so
where
that's
was this stained glass? I'm interested in that stained glass. I mean, that's
it's in the Hayti Heritage Center. If you go to hayti.org, you can actually see pictures of the stained glass, because there's like a rotating image, I think, on our YouTube channel and a number of other things. But it is a converted AME church. So it started off, I
wow.
think, in Mount Bethel, and then it was first there was a brush arbor, which means they were having service literally outside. I can only imagine what it would have been like having service in 100-degree weather and everything.
Oh.
And then at some point they built a log cabin, and that was like the middle place. And then in 1869 is when they built the actual church. And then the church stayed in existence until about 1975, when urban renewal caused it to the late 19th, I think it was 1960s or late 60s or early 70s is when they moved. But it became the Cultural Arts Center in 75. So we just last year celebrated our 50th anniversary as a Cultural Arts Center. But the church still exists. It's just about a mile and a half down from its original location and everything like that. So it moved and everything like that. But that's what it was. It was right there in Durham, North Carolina. And it's got, if you ever get a chance to visit, you can see when you walk into what we now call the performance hall or the sanctuary. If you look to upside and to your right, it's up at the top right.
When we come to North Carolina, will you take us around and show us all of these places? Because they're wonderful to write about.
I would gladly do that. I would gladly take y'all around and show y'all these lovely places, because there's amazing places that are truly amazing and that I think y'all would thoroughly enjoy and everything like that. Just really quickly, what is your take on California? Because we didn't really cover California and everything like that. And I know a lot of people, I've got a friend that moved from Hillsborough, North Carolina to California, and they are very big into, of course, the Hollywood culture, the Hollywood sign and everything like that. But what is your take on California as a place to visit and not just...
Wonderful. We were there about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We were in Santa Barbara. And we went on a tram tour of Santa Barbara and looked at the beautiful coast there.
Just incredible.
But one
Just
place
beauty.
we were determined to go to was a place called Solvang, Solvang, which is an authentic Danish community.
Wow.
And they still have all of their Danish buildings. They did not tear it down. Windmills. And their Danish pastry.
And that was good.
And that was good.
You can't go wrong with Danish pastries. But when I went on that one cruise, there was a group of people going back to the other side of the coast that were Mennonites. And I remember seeing Mennonites, because apparently part of their culture, you get to go enjoy Western world before you have to fall back into the Mennonite culture and everything like that. But it was really interesting. They were dressed in their Mennonite outfits and everything like that. But they were on the cruise ship because they have a name for it. But basically, you get to enjoy the rest of the outside world before you have to come back into the fold of the Mennonite culture. So it's kind of like what the Amish do, but the Mennonites do it as well. So that was just fascinating seeing these folks that it was like their last chance to get to enjoy Western life and Western culture and everything like that.
Yeah, I actually used to go to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, which was a very Amish country, but a lot of Mennonites live there too as well. So, you know, when you're there a lot, they just they're just a neighbor. You know what I mean? Now, if they came to Florida, and there's some cultures in Florida and Clearwater area that has the Amish there in Clearwater, Florida. But, you know, so it's a little different, but it's real. You know what? They may have different things. They may, you know, just their culture's a little different. They may wear things a little different. But you know what? And it's the same thing when you go overseas and when you go and learn about cultures overseas. we still want the basics.
Yeah.
You know, we want a roof over our head. We want food. We want a family. You know, we have all the basics. Everybody, it doesn't matter, you know, if it's in Africa, if it's in Iran, you know what I mean? We all want the basics. And as long as you know, and if you start learning the people one on one, you're going to be like, you're going to be like, well, hey, there's nothing wrong with them. They're nice. There's, you know what I mean? And I just, you know, I love to learn about people, and I just wish everybody had that passion.
I
No,
think many
everybody
times
did
it's,
that.
yeah, it's the governments that just
Yeah,
do not
government.
understand each other.
Or
And,
don't want to understand each
and
other.
they don't want to, but
No, it's
the
not just the
people,
government. It's not just the government, but it's also because I've talked about this on this show a couple of times. That's my problem with religious division as well, is because I think a lot of times we spend time figuring out the differences, and it's usually the extremes on any side. I don't care whether it's
Mhm.
Islam or Christian or Buddhism or Judaism or a number of other things, or whether it's black, white, or purple. It's mostly the extremes on any side is why we don't get along. To the most, to your point, Natalie, I think most of us want the common things. We want to have
Mhm.
respect of our own kind of existence and everything, and we definitely want to have respect of human nature, and we want to have respect along a lot of other lines. And like you said, we want a roof over our head, want the money to be able to afford to go on travel trips and do the things that we want to do and everything like that. But I think that we're more alike than we are different. But a lot of times
Yes,
people are trying to find the differences versus the commonalities. But we have a lot
exactly.
in common than we do separate and everything like that.
You
I've got
you
to
nailed it.
Yep, I've got to teach y'all and everything because I'm imagining that y'all have probably been to at least one or two, and then we get ready to wrap up show and everything like that. But there was a major event that took place in New York this weekend, and everything, just like we had the fireworks with Trump and everything like that earlier. But there was another major event, and I was watching a YouTube video where they were asking the people if they were going to this major event and everything along those lines. And I think one of the young people said they were off to the Hamptons. Somebody else said they were off to this trip or that trip, but none of them had an invitation. And I kept looking at my mailbox, and I didn't have an invitation, even though I'm somewhat of a local celebrity and everything like that. But I don't know why Travis and Taylor didn't have me on their mailing list and everything like that. But I just knew that I was supposed to be on that mailing list to be there at Madison Square Garden, even though I understand that some of the people at Madison Square Garden were not all that pleased, including some of the bars, because they lost a lot of money with all of those people that were in the wedding and everything like that. So my question to y'all is, have y'all ever been to an area where there was a destination wedding taking place and everything like that? And did y'all not get the invitation to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's wedding? Because I kept looking in the mailbox for mine. I never found it. So I think I forgot.
Well, you know, I may have been invited. I just didn't see it in my mailbox. No, I didn't get the invitation. But yes, you know, the destination weddings are just super popular now. You know, you'll hear a lot of it, like especially go down to Mexico, you know, that type of thing.
Cancun,
Yeah, Cancun.
yes.
So that is a big deal. We went to Lake Tahoe actually for my nephew, only just because I live there. But a lot of people make that as a destination type of wedding place. But yeah, so we do that. I haven't been overseas like to Europe destination wedding type of thing, not yet.
Now, I've heard some great things. Speaking of European places, I did hear some people that during the time of COVID were trying to escape. I mentioned that Nick went to Spain, but I also heard some people that decided that as they wanted to get away from the madness of the U.S. So I remember this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We had a young lady that was on the show that literally moved to Bali. So she moved to Bali to take her job in Bali, and apparently she really enjoyed Bali. So I was wondering, did you ever travel to Bali, and what was your takes on Bali? Because they literally got tired of the U.S. and they just decided that they were going to move themselves to Bali and make that their new permanent home. And I don't think she ever moved back. I think she now lives in Bali and everything like that. So what is your take on Bali? Because I've heard that's a great destination, both vacation, but also some place that you might even want to consider moving to.
Well, there's a story behind that. Yes, we had a vacation plan to go to Dubai, then over to Thailand, back to Singapore,
And
but then all down in Indonesia and Malaysia, and end up in Bali. And We had that all paid for. We were getting ready to go, and my mother's knee went out, and she had to have a knee replacement. So we weren't able to go, and that was just one of the things I was so excited about, because I always, you always hear about Bali. If you've ever watched a movie, Eat, Pray, Love, Love, Pray. What is that? Eat, Pray, Love, Eat, Love, Pray, or something. I can't. Eat, Pray,
Eat, love,
Love. That
pray.
was it.
Eat, love, pray.
I'm not sure which one's first. But Bali, I definitely want to go to Bali. We'll end up going at some point. So I cannot wait to learn more about that, because, and then the last time we were in Singapore, I've seen all of how different it was, because the last time we were there, they didn't have all those hotels. None of that was there. That was 25 years ago? None of that was there. So that was the reason why we really wanted to go back and see all the changes to Singapore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But may I just make a point about people that move overseas? I understand why they may want to do this. The only problem is, like, if you go into, maybe Ecuador or Nicaragua, and move into these places, they may be stable for a while, but you never know when that stability may change, and that you may have a problem. So I know it sounds great to move to some of these places, but if that is the type of life you want, fine. But just be aware of them.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who moved to Costa Rica. You talk about Costa Rica. He bought land in Costa Rica, and it was very stable when he bought it. But then it became unstable for a little bit, because remember, it fluctuates a lot, depending on the government that comes into power. And then he had to leave. He had to come right back to the United States. And I think he lost his land. So those things, I can see how that could be exciting to do. I have a lot of friends who want to move to Portugal. Portugal is one of those places where a lot of Americans, they call patriots. Ecuador's another one. Ecuador, you'll see a lot of expatriates there in Ecuador. But you just have to remember, if you buy something, it's not, you may not have the same rights like you have in the United States. You just have to remember that.
Yeah, you definitely got to remember that. What are some of the places you mentioned, Portugal and Ecuador? What are some of the places in the world theater that is on your wish list? We mentioned some of the places that are on the wish list in the United States, but what are some of the places that are on your wish list? Not that there's not many countries, because I think there's like 200, and y'all have been to close to half of them, because you said 91 or something like that. But what are some of the places that are on your wish list? I know you did mention that you'd like to get to some of the African countries, but you didn't say any specific ones. So what are some of the places that are on your bucket list?
I'm going to surprise you. I want to go to the 5 stands.
Uzbekistan.
You know what? Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, they are along the old Silk Road in Asia, and then they move on into Europe. Wonderful, wonderful outlook, and this is something that we want to do. I don't think it's safe right now to do. We would not go there.
Yeah, I'd love to go to Tibet. I'd love to see that. We were fairly close when we went to Nepal, when we were in Kathmandu, but I really definitely, at some point in my life, I want to go to Tibet.
What about Mongolia?
I would love to go to Mongolia. And we went to China. Now that I have to admit that I'm not the biggest fan, but I'm always interested in people and countries and history. And so when we went, it was very antiquated.
Oh, yeah.
And we're talking about Beijing.
It was. They did not even have internet, because we went to a hospital there.
To visit, not
to
be served.
Yeah, right. But at that time when we were there, it was really third world. It isn't now.
It is not now, and what I want to see is the difference, and that's been 25 years.
Did you see the monks when they visited and everything? Because I know that some friend of mine saw them when they came through North Carolina, because I think they started maybe in Florida or Georgia and kind of went up to the DC area. So did you see the monks when they came through earlier this year?
No, we didn't get to see it. I did see him on television. I got to see him on television, but no, I did not get to see that. But when you go to Nepal, especially Nepal, you see they're just everywhere. I mean, so you get to really just kind of immerse yourself into that culture and talk with them. Very friendly, but very to their own.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're definitely to their own and everything. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. I've learned so much, and y'all are definitely welcome to come to North Carolina, and I'll definitely show you around and all along those lines. But the thing that I get all my guests to do on these shows, whether it's just like the two of you or whether we have multiple guests and everything like that, is I get them to tell where they can be found in terms of social media and in terms of where people can get their book. And Liberty Twitcher has already ordered one off of Amazon and everything like that. But I'm a big believer in positivity. So I always get all my guests to give their message of positivity and the message of positivity to our global audience, because Pod TV is a global network. So I'd love to hear both of you and your mother's message of positivity. And last but not least, if you can remember the third question, the other question that I sometimes ask my guests is something that people would be surprised to know about you that we haven't talked about as we've been talking about travel on this trip. Like I've had one of them exes that I mentioned and everything like that. They used to try to talk me into going skydiving. I'm sorry, to me, planes are for one purpose, for going to point A to point B. They're not for falling out of. But I have thought about going whitewater rafting, and I have thought about doing it was a long time ago, I had thought about hot air balloons, but I did think about whitewater rafting, even though that could be dangerous as well and everything. And I'm a big person into games like word puzzles, and even that when me and my mom and my brother get together, we may play spinners, which is almost like playing dominoes, and some of the other games like that. We used to play Scrabble as well. So that's something that people may not know in terms of some of my hobbies and interests. And I do play fantasy football with my younger brother, like some 10 or 15 years ago, and everything like that. So I've got to figure out who I'm going to pick for my team starting in September. So football season is around the corner. I need to start planning what players I'm going to pick up and everything like that. So definitely, what are some interests that people may be surprised to know are your interests? And this is for both you and your mother, your message of positivity and how folks can get the book.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mark. We really appreciate it. We have, me and my mother, we have 2 books. This one was last year, Have a Love Affair with Travel. And Have a Love Affair with Travel is about our travels around the world. Okay, this is when we wrote this, people said, why don't you focus on the United States? There's so many things here in the United States. So we did. So we wrote Have a Love Affair with the USA. You can actually find both of those on Amazon. And we also have a website, which is just, www.travelersatheart.com, because we are definitely travelers at heart. So travelersatheart.com. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok now. So you can see me at Natalie or Natalie Kelly, Travelers at Heart.
She's really good at TikTok.
Well, I'm working on it. But the message of positivity, Mother, what would be your positive message?
I would say when you go any place, make sure that you really get to do something interesting. For example, when I was in Cambodia, I had KFC, Cambodian fried crickets. Natalie would not eat them.
No, I'm not eating that. So my message of
they disappeared again. Hopefully they're going to come back. I'll play one more commercial, and hopefully they'll be back with their last message.
Are you looking for money-saving strategies for your business and personal finances? Are you tired of working hard every day with little or nothing to show for it? Contact Prosperity Financial Services, LLC right now for your free financial consultation. Call now to reserve yours today. 804-349-8600. 804-349-8600.
Natalie, I'm with you on the not having Kentucky Fried Crickets. I might try them if I was in another country and everything like that. But I have a hard enough time with calamari and everything like that, which I think is squid, if I remember correctly, and everything like that.
I've got one. Frog legs.
She just had frog legs.
I just had frog legs last weekend.
I would not have.
They're
No
at a
question.
restaurant called the Yearling. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so definitely that's a good message of positivity. What's something, Evelyn, that folks who would be surprised to know in terms of a hobby or interest? Maybe something that you picked up in the last 10 years since you were in your 80s, since you're in your early 90s now. What's a hobby or interest that folks that are watching this show might be surprised, going like, I didn't know that 91-year-old does weaving or something else like that. So what's a hobby or interest that folks might be surprised to know is an interest of yours?
I don't know if it's a hobby, but it's something that I didn't do. I had written 22 books for publishers, and they did all of the marketing, but we self-published these. So my hobby is marketing, and it is fun. Most writers hate marketing, but I like it.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Natalie? What's something that is, you told how people can reach you, but what is your message of positivity, and what's a hobby that folks might be surprised to know is a hobby of yours?
Well, my positivity message would be is, life is short. Life is short, people. Let's enjoy it. Get out of your comfort zone. Don't stress about just everything. Let it roll off you. That's the one thing I learned about travel is some things that's out of your control. If it's out of your control, you can't do anything about it. Just let it go. And I'm going to tell you, feel a lot better about yourself. And that rolls over into my professional life too. That helped me in my professional life. One thing you don't know about me is I don't drink alcohol. I just don't like the taste. But when I traveled to the Yukon in Canada, they have a tradition called the sour toe cocktail. And the sour toe cocktail, only about 100,000 people in the whole world of history have done this. And I'm so honored to be a part of that. But it's a shot glass with bourbon, I guess.
Yukon Jack.
Yukon Jack, whatever that is. I guess it's bourbon. And a real human toe. And a human toe is put into that shot glass, and you're supposed to drink it real fast. The human toe has to touch your lips, but it cannot go inside your mouth, nor can you swallow it. If so, you get fined $3,000. So I participated in something I thought I'd never do, is to take a shot of that bourbon with a real human toe in it and let it touch my mouth. And of course, I am so proud that I did that.
That sounds like a scary thing to do, because I'm imagining there's not a human attached to the toe. So I'm imagining it's like a toe that has been either like a past person or something along those lines. So that sounds very scary and everything like that. But I did have one quick question for y'all that just popped into my head, because I've heard people say that the one person you don't want to travel with is, we've said that you can travel with your mom and everything like that. But I've heard people say that communication is very important in life. I mean, that's just life in general. I don't care whether it's work. I don't care whether it's love. I don't care whether it's whatever. But I've heard that a lot of people say that the one person that they are afraid to travel with, and you did mention being single, I'm in the single space as well, is traveling with a significant other. Because I did go on the cruise with the person that I was dating at the time and everything like that. So what is your thoughts around the notion of traveling with somebody that you're having romance with? Because I've heard people say that can be, if you're not very good in the communication lane, that can be problematic. I'll just put it that way and everything like that.
It could be problematic, yes. But remember, you have to know your communication. You have to know your travel style. We actually have the travel style quiz in our book, Have a Love Affair with USA. It's actually in here. And if you learn your travel style, and if you got to learn your partner travel style too, what does that mean? If your partner's travel style.
Oops. We'll run one more commercial and hopefully they'll come back.
Are you looking for money-saving strategies for your business and personal finances? Are you tired of working hard every day with little or nothing to show for it? Contact Prosperity Financial Services, LLC right now for your free financial consultation. Call now to reserve yours today. 804-349-8600. 349-8600.
About the travel style and the different ways of the travel style and everything like that. So you're saying your partner travel style is, and that's where we got cut off.
Right. So if your partner travel style is the luxurious, what we call luxurious lover, and they just want to go to the high-end hotels and they just want to have massages and they want to have expensive dinners, and you're not like that, you are what they call, into the environment. And you want to do, you want to hike or you want to go to one of the national parks, then you're probably not going to have a good time if you're arguing about that. So you really need to know each other's travel styles. And those really do kind of need to match, but also personality. My mother likes different things than I like, but we have, and different personalities. But we know how to be flexible and we know how to work with each other. So if you're able to do that, then fine. If you've got somebody who is just stubborn and everything has to be their way, then you're probably not going to have a good time.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because, like I said, the ex that I went on that trip with and all along those lines, that the first clue should have been when they told me to go. Because I am, to some degree, not always, but to some degree, a social butterfly. But when they basically were like, I'm going to stay here, you go out and do whatever you want to do in terms of watching the bands and everything like that. That should have been the clue that we had different travel styles. Because they were basically like, I'm going to stay here and go to sleep. They had done the whole eating and some of the excursions and stuff like that. They were like, now you go ahead and do what you want to do. But they were not trying to go with me and everything like that. So that should have been probably a warning clue and everything like that in terms of our differences and everything in that space.
But Mark, let me quickly say this. Okay. And yeah, you have some differences there, but you know what? Go ahead and go. Right. Enjoy it. Walk around, get lost in the town and just see everything and absorb everything. And that's what I do. I know sometimes my mother would like to just go off into a museum, and I love museums, but I don't like to spend hours and hours and hours in museums. So I'll take off and I will walk. Now, safety is always very important, especially to, maybe a single female walking around in a foreign country.
In Greece.
So you need to be really careful about that. But, if that is the case, go do it. Remember, your life is too short. You're on this earth for a very limited time.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I just lost an aunt a couple of weeks ago, and she actually passed away in her early 70s. I think she was either 74 or 75, and it was definitely some health issues that she had, but also what she decided to do in terms of the health issues, because she decided to go the naturopathic way and everything like that. So there are things that she probably could have done that could have kept her on the earth longer and everything like that. But we all have our own choices that we make, and that's the choice that she decided to make, and all along those lines. So definitely I miss her greatly, but I also know that she, as my dad said, she did it her way, and people are going to do it their way, no matter what is going on in their space and everything like that. So that is very true. I'm going to go out with an education video. It's a short video. It's not the long one, because that one that I was starting to play is like 3 minutes. But just really quickly, and this is for both of you, and it's the last question I have of the two of you. How important has education been to you? That's part of the reason that Nick and Kim created this network, is they wanted to teach people about things that they don't oftentimes know, whether that's physical education, whether that's travel education. And actually we have one of our channels deals with travel. That's Brandon Stewart, who works with the Disney franchise, if I remember correctly, but he does one of our three or four channels. One of them is a travel channel, and he talks about different places he's traveled around the world. So if you've not seen that on Pod TV, you can go to Pod TV and you can see Brandon Stewart talking about his travels as well. And it's regular shows that are airing of trips that he's made over the last several years and everything like that. But just really quickly, how important is education to you? Because this particular video is from Oklahoma, and they're honoring not just the regular teachers, but also the support staff, like the guidance counselor, the janitor, the cafeteria worker. And I had a grandmother that was a cafeteria worker, and my mom was a guidance counselor way back when I was a youngster and everything like that. And so I do know the importance of the support staff, even the resource officers, which can come from our police or sheriff department. But who is a teacher that inspired the two of you, and how important has education been in your lives?
I am an information junkie. I love information. even when all the little kids in the 6th grade were reading Nancy Drew mysteries, I was reading the encyclopedias. So I love information. I love learning, but I don't limit it just to academics. I love other topics too. And you mentioned I like to know about government. I like to know about construction. I like to know how things are done. So that is part of my life, is just being an information junkie. Education is very valuable to me. And in our family, I think we counted up, we have 19 college degrees among the members of our family. Very important, but we also realize that people need to learn and to enjoy learning.
Yeah. And I look at travel as education. We talk about this a lot, how travel has really taught me in my professional life. I've learned to negotiate because of travel. Now I can negotiate contracts. And I never would have thought that before. Mm-hmm. But travel is, to me, my business school in a way, because it's taught me how to really budget, because I need to do that. We're not rich, but I budget. I learned to budget. I learned to negotiate. And also I learned a lot of things about, behavior, and also things that you control. You respond to things that you are in control of. If you're not in control of it, you cannot worry about it. I can't control if a flight is delayed. So therefore, I don't need to have bad behavior because I'm not going to make my next flight. So if you understand all that, you're going to have a much happier travels.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And before I play this commercial, I know North Carolina is real big on trade schools, and I'm big on trade schools as well. Not just college, but also plumbers and bricklayers and a number of others that have been part of the buildup of the United States, but also the world and everything like that. So I'm sure even in your travels, you sometimes need to find a way to get a good plumber or to get a good person, electrician, or even a good mechanic if there were problems existing with your car or your vehicle. Yes. And all along those lines. So definitely trades are very important. So I'm a big fan of making sure that not everybody is meant to be a college graduate. I mean, I have a lot of college graduates in my family as well, but I do know that my uncle was a plumber, and I had other uncles and relatives that were in various trades, including car mechanics and others. So I'm a big fan of us realizing the importance of the trades as well. And North Carolina prides itself on our community colleges.
Could I just give a note in here? We were on the flats of Bolivia.
Salt flats
in Bolivia. And our car broke down. And we had a 22-year-old driver who did not speak English. But these people are master mechanics. They know how to use a paper clip or a Band-Aid, whatever. But he got that car running enough to get to another place where they could have a real group of people decide what was wrong with it.
And so it basically saved our lives because we were out in the middle of a desert.
Yeah.
Alone.
Well, I appreciate y'all both being on. I see that one of my other guests just popped in, so I'm going to let y'all go, but I'm going to play that commercial and everything, and I'll have a conversation with him for a while as well. But I'll let y'all go after I play this commercial, then I'll bring Dan Klussman on so I can talk to him briefly as well. But I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Thank
you. You're wonderful. It's really great, and thank you so much.
No problem.
For getting in touch with us. We appreciate it.
No problem. I'm glad to have y'all on. Like I said, I'm going to play this commercial and I'll bring Dan Klussman on and we'll talk for a while as well. But y'all have been great and I really learned a lot about travel, so I appreciate y'all being on. So I'll see y'all and I'll definitely reach out to y'all. I've been big on TikTok lately as well, so I'll probably make some clips and share them with you on TikTok as well as also on Instagram. So definitely I'll do that shortly as also.
Thank you.
No problem.
I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
It's non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
Yes, we have another guest on, Dan Klussman, and all along those lines, we just finished having a great conversation with the young ladies that were a mother-daughter team that had traveled the world, but Dan Klussman is an author as well. So always glad to have these amazing guests on the online dinner party and everything like that. So how are you doing, Mr. Klussman? I know you've written a book and even learned some different life lessons from some of these amazing people that you have talked to and all along those lines. So like I said, we just had an hour and a half conversation, but I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you, maybe not as long, but at least 35 minutes to an hour about what you've got going on. So definitely share a little bit about your book and what's happening in your world.
Well, sorry I got on late. I was held up with a phone call and almost blew it.
No problem.
I am a first-time author, but I feel guilty when I say I'm an author because my book, Life Answers Back, is a compilation of stories I collected over 15 years and features the creative talents of over 80 authors. So it's a book of short stories and features that inspire, motivate, entertain, have you laughing, have you crying, and it's basically just a wonderful read for just about anybody that is, whether they're traveling, whether they're just wanting to be entertained or to enjoy a great book.
What are some of your favorite stories in the book? I did get a copy of the book and everything along those lines, but I just wondering, what are some of your personal favorite stories in the book? Because like you said, it's a compilation and you can learn a lot of great lessons from different people and everything like that. I know that in my own book collection, I've got the works of people like some famous TV anchors. Like I know I've got a book by Mike Wallace. I've got a book by Diane Sawyers. I've got a book, of course, by Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and a number of other great famous people and all along those lines. So I do know that a lot of people that are in different walks of life. I think I've even got a book from, in fact, I know I've got a book from Dick Van Dyke and everything like that. So there's a lot of things that we can learn from these various autobiographies and different kind of communications, whether it's an autobiography, whether it's a biography, or whether it's your neighbor down the street that might have told you a story and everything like that. So what are some of your favorite stories and some of the life lessons that you have learned?
It's tough when you have, like, say, over 80 authors contributing to it. I loved a lot of the stories. I enjoy the laughter because there's a lot of humor in the book. But I also don't mind crying, and some of the stories that really move you, bring you to tears. I don't know why we like them so well, but those are the stories we remember and a lot of times want to share with others. There were several stories in there like that. The one of a taxi cab driver taking a lady to the hospice for her final ride, which was very moving. There was another one about a little girl dying of leukemia. It's called I Wish for You a Sandpiper, and the effect she had on a man who befriended her. They're just stories that you remember, and they are my favorites, I guess, as far as tearjerkers. But like I say, there's a lot of humor in the book. As an older person, there was a retiree mental test in there, and you take the test, and it comes to the conclusion that most retirees don't have the brains of a 4-year-old as you fail the test. You know, it's a fun book to read. It's hard to put down once you start reading the stories. But the nice thing about this book is I have yet to find anybody that didn't love the book. And
the book has great stories, because even when you're talking about that last hospice trip, actually when I was talking to the travel mother and daughter, I was remembering that when I was in Florida, there was a young lady that was raising money because she was fighting cancer. I think eventually she succumbed to cancer, but they were doing like those haircut-a-thons in order to raise money to help her in her battle against cancer and everything like that. So that's one of the stories that I remember. And that was back in the late 80s when I was working at the Boca Raton News and everything like that. But there's stories I also remember telling them about the manatee that got stuck in somebody's house. Because like I said, I was only in the Boca Raton News. I worked at a couple of daily newspapers, but that one was like maybe for 5 or 6 months. But I do remember that particular story, and just along those lines of funny stories and everything like that. And you'll get a kick out of this. I remember that when I worked in Boca Raton, I covered a story at one of their high schools and everything like that. And I remember going there, and I don't drive, I get around by mass transit, but me and the photographer went there, and I remember looking at I think we had gone in his car, or maybe at that time I was driving and everything like that. But I remember that when I got there, I saw all these fancy cars, like, fancy for that day, like Porsches and Ferraris and Benzes and all of these fancy cars. So I remember getting to my contact for the story, and I was like, hey, so I think they asked me where I parked, and I was like, I parked in the east lot, and y'all must really get paid really well and everything. And then they proceeded to ask me, they said, did you say the east lot, like the far east lot? I was like, yeah, that's the teacher lot, right? They were like, no, that's the student lot. So all the students were living in this high rich area, because Boca Raton is near West Palm Beach and a lot of other ritzy areas and everything like that. So I'm thinking that the teachers are getting paid well, and we know teachers do not get paid well and everything like that. But it was actually the students that their parents were making a lot of significant money that was able to afford to buy them cars like that and everything like that. So yeah, it was one of them life lessons that I learned very quickly, not to be fooled by the facade of things that you may hear and everything like that. So I do remember that story, even as I was reading about your hospice story and everything along those lines. I was thinking about the young lady with the haircut-a-thon and all in that space. But yeah, there's all kinds of fascinating stories, and your book has got many of them. And like you said, some of them are also humorous. So what are some of your favorite humorous stories that you remember from the book as well?
We put a lot of things in, they're, while I say they're all stories, they're all sorts of things people have written. There was one guy that did tips for holiday eating, where he starts out by saying, avoid carrot sticks. Anyone who puts carrots on a holiday buffet table knows nothing about the holiday spirit. In fact, if you see carrots, leave immediately. Go next door where they're serving rum balls. And there's a bunch of other little stories like that. There was a lot of fun quotes in there. I think not the humorous ones, but the other ones with good life lessons were from famous people. It starts off with a neat story about Coach Paul Bear Bryant, and how he learns that it doesn't cost anything to be nice, but the rewards can be unimaginable. Those are the kind of stories that there's life lessons under them. We can all be entertained by a story, but the underlying meaning a lot of times gives us life lessons that we can all learn from. And I thought too, when I published this book, I wish I'd have published it back when my kids were teenagers, because I think while they don't always listen to us as parents, if they're reading a story and a life lesson emerges that they remember, it can add to their growth and ability in the future if they keep some of these things in mind, even if it's something as simple as being nice to people.
Yeah, you definitely got to be nice to people and everything like that. Because I know one of the great life lessons I learned is definitely to be nice to people and accept people's differences. We were talking about that earlier when the other guests were on and everything like that, because too often we are too quick to judge and all along those lines. So it definitely got to be nice to folks and everything like that. I just wondered, because one of the books, speaking of not being nice, one of the funniest books that I ever saw, and it was a book that my mom had and everything like that. And it was a book, and you might have even seen the book because it was somewhat famous, but it was a book called What Men Know About Women. And if you look at the book and you open the book is all full of empty pages, because the argument is that we don't really know anything about women and everything like that. So I just remember that book being in my mom's book collection. But like I said, if you flip through the book, it's nothing but empty pages.
Well, there's a lot of people too. My book is different from most, but the one book that has been compared most to is Chicken Soup for the Soul,
Right.
the original one. And that got me excited because it went on to serve or please hundreds of millions of readers all around the world and was one of the more successful books of all time. And yet my book is very similar with the individual little stories in there that motivate and inspire. In fact, I talked with Jack Canfield, who did the Chicken Soup, or he was the co-creator of Chicken Soup. And Jack loved my book. He said that if he hadn't just retired and sold the rights to the whole series, he would love to have published my book and added it to his list of hits. So when you get an endorsement like that, it means a lot. And even the Amazon book editor, the first review I got, he says, Life Answers Back does not belong on a shelf, on a bookshelf. It deserves a special place in every reader's heart. So when you have professionals like that giving you great reviews, you think, hey, this book's going to do all right. But then reality sets in when there's like over 5 million books on Amazon and they got like 100,000 new ones every week. You realize how hard it is just to get your book noticed in this world when you're not already a famous author or a media personality that can plug their book on television, whatever. But I can guarantee Life Answers Back is probably one of the more enjoyable books anybody will ever read. There's a bonus. The stories originally appeared in a website I ran for 20 years, still going. And so when you buy the book, you also get a free membership to the website. And it has all sorts of things that will make you enjoy life throughout the year. I also like to work with worthy causes. So anybody that buys the book, if they've got a local worthy cause, can be their church, their school, or even something like having your kid want to earn money to go on a class trip. We just set a week aside where all profit from book sales go to help the worthy cause. So that's something that makes me feel good. And the book does some good that way.
There's a lot of nonprofits here in Durham, North Carolina, where I'm based at and everything like that. So how would a worthy cause get involved with that? I know that my brother has a Slingshot Club, and the Slingshot Club has actually done some work with the MS Society and some things around domestic abuse and other things like that. There are a number of organizations like Durham Care and a number of others that are in that worthy cause category. So just if there is anybody watching that's live from North Carolina or other places that feel they have a worthy cause, or like you said, maybe they don't have enough money to send their kids off to college, as college will be starting in August for some folks and everything along those lines. How does one go about applying to get their name on the cause list?
Well, if you get the book, my email is on the first page of it, or the third page, I guess. So just write me an email and I can explain it. It's very easy. We give you information on the book that if you have a following of any kind, let's say it's at a school or whatever, and they can publicize the fact that anybody that buys Life Answers Back, 100% of the profit will go to whatever cause they want. And we just set a certain week ahead. So if you are going to start it on July 4th, July 4th through 11th, all profit goes to that particular cause, even if it's from other sources. So, it's a win-win. They will get money that they had never gotten before. And the nice thing is anybody that buys the book, mainly to help the worthy cause, when they get the book, they will love it and they will thank the group that told them about this book. So.
That makes sense. And it doesn't matter the nature of the cause, because I know some people are having causes that are more liberal or more conservative, or does it matter the nature of the cause where you're just trying to do things that are for the good of society and not necessarily either on the political spectrum and everything like that? Because I know there are a lot of causes that are bipartisan, for lack of a better
word. We try and stay away from politics. You're like me, probably. You get deluged with emails from all these candidates wanting to have you donate to their whatever office they're running for. So I want to stay away from politics, but it seems like everybody wants to have money for something, and there's so many good causes.
Yes.
But a lot of times people look at you, the minute you mention a book, then they don't really trust that as a way to earn money. But believe me, this is a very simple way to do it. And when we first tested it with our local Knights of Columbus, they made $1,200 in just a couple weeks, just sharing it with the parishioners at the Catholic Church. So it's easy to do and money to make.
No, I know Knights of Columbus because I went to Marquette and they had I want to say one of the houses was a Knights of Columbus house that eventually was torn down and everything like that. Just like there was I think they still have the Joan of Arc chapel there at Marquette. I was there in the 80s, the early 80s, and all along those lines. I think that chapel is still there. I need to call some of my fellow alumni and everything like that. But I know even here in North Carolina, yes, a lot of times it can be something simple. That can be a good fundraiser because I don't know if they're still doing it, but definitely before the pandemic. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that they started it after the pandemic ended and everything. The Kiwanis and the Durham Rotary would have regular pancake sales and everything like that. So there's a lot of ways that a lot of these organizations are doing these simple fundraisers and everything like that. Because I know I think the last time I went was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but hey, you can get a nice little breakfast with pancakes and sausage and everything by going to some of these breakfast outings that were also an opportunity to learn about the organization and in some cases raise funds as well. So definitely it's a good way to get a good breakfast in the process and all along those lines. But yeah, I love humorous stories. Do you have any that are North Carolina based? Because, we've had some great coaches here. There was definitely the inventor of the Four Corners, even though people forget that Dean Smith gets the credit, but Mr. McClendon, who is North Carolina Central University's gym is named after, was actually the person that created that strategy, and he created some other strategies as well. And of course, Dean Smith gets the credit. And of course, a lot of people are familiar with Coach K, and Coach K has had some great quotes in his life. And of course, I went to Marquette, and Al McGuire had all kinds of great quotes. And I mentioned earlier with my people that were doing travel around the country and around the world, because we were talking about cemetery travel, that Jim Valvano's cemetery is still quite often visited, and he had a lot of great quotes when he was having his cancer battle and everything like that. So I was wondering if you had any, other than Bear Bryant, any coaches from the Southeast.
There's several things in regards to football in the book. I'm trying to remember. There's a lot of great quotes from various coaches around the nation, and I'm sure there's some from Carolina in there. I did just remember you asked me earlier, and I couldn't quick come up with one of my favorite humorous stories. Right. But there was a little girl arguing with her teacher about whether a whale could swallow Jonas or not. And the teacher said, "It is physically impossible." So the little girl said, "Well, when I get to heaven, I will ask Jonah." The teacher, irritated, said, "Well, what if Jonah went to hell?" And the little girl said, "Well, then you ask him." We're talking about, little kids and some of the humor they come up with. So that was a fun story.
That's interesting you say that, because on the news show earlier and everything, we actually had a similar story because it went viral and everything like that. But there was a young lady that was being asked about why there was the need for slaves and all along those lines.
Whoops, did we lose you?
The kanji and everything like that. But the young lady who actually wrote in pencil, they didn't need slaves. So she was actually challenging the teacher because she was saying they didn't need slaves. So because the question was asking, why did they need slaves? And she was like, they didn't need them. So she was actually using that as a form of humor and was challenging the teacher in much the way that the whale lady was challenging her teacher and everything like that. So from the old saying goes, from the mouth of babes comes great wisdom. I think that's the old saying that I've heard for decades. And quite often it is very true that we don't give enough credit to our young people because they oftentimes are even smarter than we are in a lot of ways and everything like that. When did you decide you wanted to be an author? Because I knew that I wanted to go into journalism way back when I was in the 6th grade. I think I put together a mimeograph paper when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And I've also done event planning. That didn't come about till my adult years and all along those lines. And now I've become, at that Cultural Arts Center that I mentioned earlier, a staff historian. But both of those came up later in life. The journalism, I knew I wanted to do that way back in the Watergate era of the 70s. So I was probably '76. I was probably like around 11 or 12 or something like that. So I knew that I wanted to get into journalism for a number of years for a number of reasons. And part of that was admiring people like Hunter S. Thompson, who wrote Fear and Loathing at the Kentucky Derby, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and was known as a gonzo journalist, but also having a great admiration for investigative journalists like Woodward and Bernstein and folks like that. So at what point did you know that you wanted to be an author? Because you're not a spring chicken either. I just turned 64 last Wednesday, so a week ago today. So I'm 64 and a week and everything like that. But I can tell you, you're not a spring chicken either. My guest earlier, I think the daughter was probably in her 60s or 70s, and the mother was 91 or 92 and everything like that. So it definitely, I do believe in the wisdom of young people, but also the wisdom of our elders as well. So at what point did you know you wanted to be an author, and do you have other plans to write other books?
Well, no, not at this point, because I am 79 years of age and I've got too many things to do without trying to market another book. But stories have played a big part in my life. My mother was a great storyteller. She was actually a war bride in World War II and worked at Bletchley Park, where they broke the famous Enigma code that there's been several books and movies written about. So she always had a story to tell. I grew up reading great books like Robinson Crusoe, Black Beauty, and others, so I liked stories then. I lived my whole adult life in the movie theater industry, in marketing. And movies are the ultimate storytelling business, I think. And I had clients in 37 countries around the world that I would tell them about the stories that Hollywood had in store for them. So that, as always, storytelling played a big role in my life. When I started the Life Answers Back website, I collected a lot of stories that were the basis for this book. And finally I decided, well, I've got all these great stories. Why not choose the best of them and put them in a book so that more people can enjoy them? So I don't know how I got to be an author, but I wish I'd have done it a lot earlier in life when I had more energy and more time. But right now, I just have to say that it's a book that I want to share the creativity and the talent of all those authors that are featured there. And I want to bring pleasure to as many readers as I can. Life Answers Back is available in most bookstores, and you can get it online. And it's just an easy book to get, and it's one that you'll be very thankful that you got to enjoy.
Yeah, it sounds like a great book and everything like that. My grandmother created the first African-American library in Raleigh, North Carolina, and everything like that. And she actually went around knocking on people's doors, collecting money in order to build that library, a library that is still in existence. And I think it was last year they created an award in her name. And she also has a book collection in her name as well at that particular library. So even though she passed away back in '82, so some 44 years ago and everything like that, she is still being recognized and still being honored even to this day for her role and everything like that. And I'm a big fan of storytelling. I think that storytelling is something that we all need to be aware of. And I'm a big person of wanting to hear more stories. And I don't think that we do a good enough job of that and everything like that. Because one of the things that I regret is people that I have not had the pleasure of interviewing, that I wish I had the pleasure of interviewing when they were living, so I could able to document more of their stories, even in my own family history. I just recently lost an aunt, and I wish that I had documented some of the things that she shared with me when she was living, and all along those lines. So how important do you think storytelling is in society, and do you wish that it was more recognized than it is? Because I know some cultures are very big on storytelling and everything like that. So how important do you think storytelling is in our society?
I think we underestimate it. I mean, you can go back to prehistoric men and women sitting around a campfire. They're talking about something, more than likely they're telling stories. But like I say, my whole life has been involved with stories. And I think they allow us to see beyond our own life and see what other people are doing, what other people have been challenged with, what other people have overcome, and to get ideas for improving our own life. The stories run the gamut from all sorts of areas that we can learn from. It adds to our education. reading has always been a big part of life in this country. I'm not sure the status now as far as the internet kind of taking over and all the kids glued to their iPhones. I don't, I know that a lot of them aren't even taught to write in cursive anymore. So I hope we're not losing the storytelling ability and replacing it with the video type things that AI and everybody else can quickly grab your attention with. And so many of the stories that you see, even like on a Facebook, my wife will come in and say, "Oh, look at this terrible story." And I have to say, "Hey, it's not a real story. It's all fake. It's to pull you in so they can, get you to watch a commercial at some point." So storytelling is a huge part of our lives, and I'll do my best to make people enjoy stories like through this book. But it's something that is very important to life and our future.
I agree with you. It's definitely important to life and our future. What advice would you give to somebody else that is thinking they want to write a book, even if they want to write a book later in life? Like I said, I do have those authors. They wrote a book about traveling the world, and then that led to a book about traveling in the USA, and that was the mother-daughter team of Nancy and Evelyn Kelly, if I remember their names correctly, and all along those lines. But what advice would you give to somebody that think they want to write a book, whether it's writing a book as a youngster or writing a book in their 90s, as you did?
Well, I shouldn't say the biggest mistake, but one of the mistakes I made was, I think I mentioned earlier, is my target audience is everyone, because I can't think of a single person that wouldn't enjoy my book. But when you have that as a target audience, it's harder to market, as opposed to if you can cater to a certain group. Because then when you've got a subject that is going to appeal to a particular group, then they will kind of look for that and grab it up and be more likely to order a copy. I think also, to be an author or to publish a book is a very difficult process anymore, as far as just getting your book noticed. And that's why I say to have a particular target audience in mind, do a lot of research ahead of time, and as you're writing the book, be thinking about the marketing behind it, because some of the best books in the world, including mine, unless you can market it to where people are aware of it and give them a reason why they should want to buy it, it's not going to go anywhere. But if you can, direct it towards a particular group that will help them, whether it's health or a lot of other areas, that's what I would suggest for people to write a book. And if you got a lot of time, just the writing of the book makes you feel good. And when it's finally done and published, it's a good feeling. And just don't plan on making a lot of money out of it unless it's really good and you got the marketing nailed.
Yeah, you got to have that marketing nailed for sure. And now there was a popular magazine that used to have a lot of short stories in it, a lot of famous quotes. I love doing the cryptic quotes, and part of the reason I love doing the cryptic quotes is because there are quotes about people that you knew, like the Thomas Jeffersons and the Abraham Lincolns, but there are also quotes of people that you didn't really know that much about, and you would oftentimes wind up doing research about the person behind the quote just as much as solving the quote, whatever the quote was, and everything like that. But I remember growing up in the 70s and 80s reading a lot of the Reader's Digest, and the Reader's Digest had a lot of great quotes in it from famous people and things along those lines. So I was wondering, is that a publication that inspired you to write this book? Because as I recall, the old Reader's Digest, there was a lot of short stories, but there are also a lot of quotes in that book as well and everything. And it was a very popular magazine. I don't know if it's popular now because we're in the age of the internet, but the Reader's Digest used to be very popular and it used to have a lot of quotes in it as well. So I was wondering, is that something that inspired you to want to write this stout book?
I don't know how much that inspired me, but I think it was cumulative with all the things that I read, growing up, and the things that, everything from, your local newspaper to a lot of the great magazines and information. I think we all have a thirst for knowledge and entertainment and learning new things, and a thirst to be able to laugh and cry and, have the emotions come through. But the way I got into this book was that, like, say, actually collecting them for that website. But it was basically people. I collected a lot of the stories, but then members started sending me their stories. And you figure when things are shared with others, that also makes you feel good if you can bring a little joy into their life. In fact, when you look through all the reviews I've gotten on Life Answers Back, probably the most common word I've seen is joy.
Mm-hmm.
And the phrase that I hear from almost every person that's ever read it is, "I love this book." So those are the kind of things that inspire you and make you want to write a book, I guess. But
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned that you had been involved in the movie industry and the marketing aspects. I do have friends that are movie makers, filmmakers, and all along those lines. And I do agree with you that is one of the current forms of storytelling and everything like that. But it sounds like you were working maybe for a movie theater or something like that and were doing some of the marketing, or maybe it was in one of the movie studios and everything along those lines. So how much is your earlier career influenced your book as well? Because you did mention that you had worked in the movie industry, and I'm a big admirer of the movie industry.
I think it just comes from the love of storytelling. I mean, I love movies. People ask me for my favorite movie, but I can name tons of favorite movies, and they're all different. But they just, I remember when I was 16, I went to work in a movie theater, basically because they gave you free Coke, free popcorn, and you got to work with pretty girls, which you can't lose when you're 16.
Right.
But then I learned how fun it was to make people happy, to see that audience come in and their smiles when they would come out, and even tears. I remember we played Romeo and Juliet one time, and right at the end of that movie, the announcer says, "Never was there a story of more woe than that of Juliet and her Romeo." And you could hear the people sobbing and crying in the auditorium. And I would go in there to open the doors, and every night I never got tired of seeing those emotions come out. And that kind of satisfaction, I think, from storytelling is what's made a big part of my life and eventually ended up in this book.
Oh, wow. Are there any stories from the movie industry that you share in the book as well? So are there any stories that came from your work life that are shared in the book, or that you remember that came from that work life experience, whether it was in the movie industry or whether it was in other jobs that you have held?
Oh, that would be a subject for another book, because like I say, when I thought of writing, when you make a movie, a great movie is not one person.
Right.
It's hundreds of talented people coming together to produce a wonderful movie. So when I went to publish a book and I had all these great stories from other authors, I thought the same thing would hold true. To have the best book possible. Most books have just one author. This book has 80. Therefore, it should be one heck of a lot better than most books that have just one author. That's not to put a single author down, because there's been some wonderful books. But it was learning that in the movie industry that it's a group effort to make a great movie. And I think my book was a group effort from the 80 plus authors that featured their talent in that book.
It's interesting you say that, because I had the pleasure, I've been featured in a couple of books. One, a friend of mine took their interview from this particular network and converted it into a book and everything like that. So that was Van Dorn Hennon. But then I was asked to be part of a compilation book that was released last year. I think it was released last New Year, if I remember correctly. So not New Year 2026, but New Year of 2025. But it was a compilation of people that had met through the internet. And Brian Shulman, who is a LinkedIn influencer, came up with this idea. He's written several books, but he asked some of us to participate with him on this book. I think there were like maybe 20 something authors, because the chapter that I wrote was about your soul family and all along those lines. So that we actually had to write something about our connection. So I wrote about the fact that our family isn't just our birth family, but it's also a family of people that you are connected to, that you have a soul connection with, and all along those lines. So that was what my chapter was about. As I was glad to meet a lot of people that I felt a soul connection with through his What's Up Wednesdays, which he used to do regularly, and Shout Out Saturdays. I think both of them were called, but they were like some LinkedIn networking sessions that he would do, and they would have like some dance contests and some lip sync contests, and we would all have some fun and humor and everything like that. So my whole notion was that yes, I do have my birth family, but I've also got a lot of people that I consider my soul family and everything like that. So we had a connection even if we weren't in the same bloodline and everything like that. So I think that that's something very important. So I was glad to write that chapter, and I hadn't written anything in ages except for newspaper articles and of course doing some prep for some of these radio shows and stuff like that. So it was just good to be part of a compilation book. So I was not, and didn't have as many 80 authors like you did, but I was part of a 20 author situation. Yeah. I think it was 20 or 25 of us, and we did get to be Amazon bestsellers last year. So I think you're probably an Amazon bestseller, but Brian's book has been Amazon bestsellers, a couple of them, but including the one that I was in. But I know he's written probably like 6 or 7 Amazon bestsellers and everything like that. So it was good to be part of that and to have that recognition. So how important is recognition for you when you get these recognitions, whether it's an Amazon bestseller or it's just people praising your book, including the author of the Soul book and everything like that? So James Canfield. So what is it like when you get these special honorees or honors from either fellow authors or from just citizens in general?
That's what makes you feel all your effort and time and money, have gone into, is when you see the positive reactions come from readers. And I don't want to say, there's some that are more important than others. Like Amazon's book editor was the first one that gave me a great review. And he said, Life Answers Back does not belong on a shelf. It deserves a special place in every reader's heart. Well, when you read something like that, it makes you feel good. But just when we did the original test with the Knights of Columbus in Bozeman, we had a 93-year-old man be given a copy of it by his nephew. He came back and bought 10 extra copies for his 10 children. So that actually made me feel better than any of the great reviews I'd gotten from famous people about the book. You never know. And a lot of times it's just the people you run into that say, hey, Dan, I loved your book. Can I get another copy? And the one thing about a book like this, you look for all the different sales points, but it makes a great gift for others because they will thank you for the joy it brings them. And
no doubt about that. And we got one other guest that I wasn't expecting, and I'm glad she joined us as well. So we'll bring in, because she's about transformation as well. So we've got Love Lydia right now. She's on mute and got people in the background and everything like that. But yeah, these books are very important and all along those lines. So it's just great when you get that kind of recognition and everything like that. Lydia, if you'll share a little bit about what you got going on, because I know you're in the transformation space and everything. I think you're on mute right now, but if you'll share a little bit about what you've got going on in your world. Yeah, she's still on mute. So hopefully she can get off mute. Might have to go and see if you can get off mute because it's on.
There. How's that?
That's good. Share a little bit about what you got going on, because I know you're into the transformation space and everything like that. So you're definitely trying to get people to transform. And Dan here has written an amazing book about life answers that he's collected 80 stories from various people, including some famous folks, some not so famous folks, and everything like that. But he has got all these life answers, and he is a 91-year-old, I think I can say correctly, first-time author and everything like that. So he's
91 years old.
79.
79.
Not 91 yet.
I was thinking about my other kids.
Oldest quick, but
like,
sure
wow.
happens.
That's still impressive. Well, congratulations. That's amazing.
So share a little bit about what you've got going on, Lydia. I know that you're in that transformation space and you've got some good life changes and things that have happened in your life as well. So share a little bit about what you've got going on in your world.
Well, I have a book. It's called To Hell with You, and it's basically a true story, basically a time in my life about 30 years ago, and how coming through that, and then just the gems that I learned from all that information and trauma, for lack of a better word, and what I did with it, and how I raised my boys with it as well. So.
What are some of the lessons you learned from going through the trauma? Because I think sometimes I say what I was talking about Dan, because he was sharing about somebody that and one of his stories was involving a young lady that was going on that last trip to Honduras, if I remember correctly, and everything like that. So, what are some of the lessons you learned in the space of trauma and your own trauma?
A lot of lessons, but the first one that comes to mind, because it was huge, was about failure. It was reframing failure. Everybody thinks, well, at least I thought, that if things didn't turn out the way I wanted them to be, then I failed. And that was a really horrible energy to live in. So then learning that it's not failure, it's just failure is a word that we put on something that didn't work out the way we thought. And that's also conditioning from society and culture and things like that. But so I reframed it, and because it made itself known to me that it's not failure, it's just information. What I choose to do with it, that information, that outcome, is simply I made a choice, and then there was a reaction, there was an outcome. And whatever that outcome would be, I put whether it's a negative or positive. And so if it was negative, or I didn't like it, I didn't like the way it felt, then it was information saying, okay, why don't I like that? Why does it make me feel bad? Whatever that made me go back into it. Not deny that I didn't like it, but then go back and find out why I didn't like it, and then it gave me information to go forward. And then if I did like it as well, why did I like it? What is it about it that resonated with me? So I don't believe that there's not any such thing anymore as failure. All it is that we have a choice to make. We make a choice, and then there's an outcome, and then we put the spin on it based on our conditioning. We put the spin on whether it's bad or good.
Since you say that and everything, and along those same lines, and this is for both you and Dan, because my other two guests I was talking about, which is the mother and daughter team, and that's actually the ones that were 91. So I'm sorry if I aged you a little bit too quickly, Dan, and everything like that. It was the mother that was 91 or 92 and everything like that. But one of the things that we were talking about with the Kelly ladies is the notion of the imposter syndrome. And I know that I am notoriously bad for talking myself out of stuff and everything, whether it's in romance or whether it's in jobs and all along those lines. So I was wondering, how did the two of you deal with that in your lives? Because like I said, you had to decide at 78, if you're 79 now, to write the book and everything, and you had to decide to face these demons, for lack of a better term, and everything like that. So how do you deal with that in reality? Because I know a lot of times on this show, particularly Online Dinner Party, we talk about that whole notion of the imposter syndrome and how we can be our worst enemies, because we'll have those little inner conversations. By the time we get to the answer that is the correct answer, or the answer that we want to get to, is the destination has left the door, to put it bluntly, and everything like that, whether that's romance or whether that's jobs or whether that's wanting to be an author. So I'd love to hear, I'll start with you, Dan, but I also want to hear from Lydia as well. How did you deal with that inner voice? Because I'm sure that there was times that you were going to see yourself. I was a movie person when I was a teenager, and I've had different other jobs. Nobody wants to read my book and everything like that. So I'm sure you had that conversation with yourself and everything like that. And now you've got these great folks that are saying that this book is the best thing since sliced bread. So now it was worth doing. But I'm sure that at the early stages, you were not having that kind of thought.
No, I think there's a quote that says you're always just one decision away from a totally different life. We make all sorts of decisions in our lives that we wish we could have gone back and done better, done over, or not made. The one that came with publishing a book, it had me enjoying the process. So the whole time that I was putting it together, I was enthused. But then you're followed by things when you realize how much time it's going to take, the difficulties when you publish a book, Everybody says that they can help make it a million seller, but most of them don't know what they're talking about. And then you have second thoughts that, well, maybe I shouldn't have published this book. There's better things I could do with my time, but I'm not a quitter. And so it's once you make a commitment to something, I feel like you got to follow it through and give it your all. But my life, like say, lots of things probably entered into it. And even 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I never even thought about writing a book. But it's one of those decisions I made that I'm excited about, and sometimes I regret it, but it's something I can't go back and change at this point.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Lydia? What made you decide you want to write this book? And you said that there was even lessons that you're trying to tell your own kids from what you learned in your own life, that they don't make the same mistakes that maybe you were part of and everything like that. So what made you decide you wanted to write this book, and what advice would you give to others that are thinking they want to write a book? I've got a friend of mine that says that she's had this book in her mind that she wants to write, but she's also afraid of the impact that the book could have, because it would definitely deal with a ex-husband and some traumas that she went through, and she's got adult kids and actually got several grandkids now. But I think that friend has got like 6 or 7 grandkids. So I'm sure she's concerned about the impact the book could have on her family history and her family dynamics and everything like that. And I'm sure that's something you even had to face with your own things that you were dealing with.
Yes, for sure. And I would recommend to your friend just to keep going. And yeah, I had the same issues. My first readers were my 4 sons. Me and 2 of them in particular were in the book. And there are people in that might be still alive that this book talks about, but the names I changed, and certain circumstances, not really circumstances, but, pinpointing criteria that would be able to single them out, I changed, and I put that in the book. It was a disclaimer, and then just wrote my story. And that's the reason why is because there was a lot to be learned from it. And then maybe it could, if I helped one person, then that would be huge. So to answer your question.
What's the one thing you're hoping people get from your book and everything? Because I know it deals with some very traumatic things and all along those lines. So what's the one thing you're hoping people can get from your book, even as they're reading the book, that they might be able to learn as a life lesson? Because that's part of what Dan's book is about, life answers. But some of it's done humorously, some of it's done less humorously and everything like that. But Lydia, what's some of the things you're hoping folks get from your particular book?
That anything can be overcome. Bottom line. And whatever we think is the deepest, darkest thing we've ever done, or thing, the trauma we've ever had, there's always a way out. There's always a way to find peace.
How important do you think it is for people to write their traumas down in books, whether that's either in journals or just in life in general? Because I do have some friends that have gone through trauma and they may not want to write a book. Like I said, I do have that one friend that's thought about writing a book, but then I have other friends that just do journal, and that's how they get their trauma out, and it's very important to them. Because I think sometimes we don't pay enough attention to psychology and our own psychology and our own mental well-being and everything like that. So how important do you think it is to write those kind of intimate thoughts down, even if it's in nothing but a journal? Lydia.
For my experience, I think we have to be careful, because, and for me, writing that book, it was deep, dark trauma, and I had to go back to that place. And sometimes I felt like, oh man, that's not healthy. And so you have to be really careful that you have the support, and you have, somebody or some professionals with you if you're actually diving into the traumatic part of it, because you could get stuck in there and relive it. So, and you have to know, you don't want to wallow in it. You don't want to stay there. That's what trauma you can stay there and never recover. But so you gotta be careful, I think. And but if, for some people, it does help you to journal. So then they've been doing it before, and they wouldn't just necessarily start it now, because they've already have a pattern of doing it, even since they were little. And so if that helps you, because everybody has their own mechanisms to help cope, then yeah. But I don't think everybody should write a book, be based on their trauma. I don't think so. I mean, it's just everybody's different, and it's not easy, and it's not. It can be dangerous, I think. So, and not to put fear in people's thing in their heads, because fear is again a stopping block we all can overcome. Just we have to have that will to want to overcome, and the belief. And then that's another question: where do you get the belief and the courage to do that? That's another topic. You know, where that come from? And so it's not black and white. Nothing ever is, and it's more complicated than that. And for people to say things that are easy and, you know, just do this, no, it's not that easy. And it's for us to. We're living in this generation right now where, you know, everything is fast and easy and quick and whatever. And if it's not, then it's not fast enough. Well, you know, come on, we have to take the responsibility. In order to take responsibility for our lives, that takes time. It takes commitment. It takes work. And so many of us are not willing to do the work. We want to blame. You can't blame. You have to take responsibility. You cannot blame. So, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense and everything like that. How important do you think it is to have that work-life balance? And this is for both you and Dan and everything like that, because I know that a lot of times people are thinking that they need that work-life balance. I was talking about that to the earlier guests and everything like that, and sometimes it's a misnomer. Some people are thinking that there is no such thing as a work-life balance, because you got to have work, and sometimes the balance is out of alignment and everything like that. So how important do you think it is to have a work-life balance? And that's for both of you, but I'll start with you, Lydia. So how have you been able to maintain a work-life balance since it sounds like you're also raising four adult kids and everything like that, but how is it important it is for you to have that work-life balance?
Well, they are all raised, so they're all on their own now. So, yeah, no, I didn't have a balance. I didn't, not with raising them. They were my priority. They were everything. And because I just felt like it was my responsibility. So I didn't have a balance. It was them. And, you know, that was my choice. And so I think people have to have a choice. They make a choice of how they want to live. If they want to have a balance, they can have a balance. If they don't want a balance, everything is individual. And to make it a blanket statement, I think you can't. And so, and for that time in my life, they were it. Right now, I have more of a balance. I'm pursuing more of the things that I want to do and be the person that I want to be, aside from being a mother, a teacher, a this, a that, because there's just Lydia at the end of the day. And so that's who I really want to be, is me. And
that makes a lot of sense. What about you, Dan? How have you dealt with that work-life balance? I can't remember if you've got, as a matter of fact, I think you did mention having the wife and everything along those lines. So how have you dealt with the work-life balance, and how have you dealt with that kind of balancing of life?
Well, as they say, the best laid plans, don't always work out. I didn't plan on getting this old this quick, but it really happened quick. The fact that I'm now a full-time caregiver for a wife who suffers from dementia is something that I never planned in my life. You put things in your bucket list that you want to do in your life, travel and do all these things, and all of a sudden you realize how old you are, and now you've got other problems. And I think a lot of people face health problems that they hadn't planned on. So you should live life to the fullest while you've got the opportunity. I don't know why I was just thinking to it, but we were talking earlier, the storytelling. I remember always listening to Paul Harvey talk about the rest of the story. And I think that's something that a lot of the stories in Life Answers Back are things that we didn't understand the background behind them, or the decisions or the balancing in life that it took. There was one about World War II hero Eddie Rickenbacker. We always remember his stories of fearless as a pilot and putting down German airplanes. But later in his life, he would go out to the end of a California pier every Friday night with a bucket of shrimp and feed seagulls. People thought he was just some demented old fool, but they didn't realize he was that war hero whose life was saved by a seagull. So there's a lot of fun that we can get from stories where you find out things you didn't know or you thought you knew, and you find out the truth. But anyway, getting back to the balance in your life, life throws at you all sorts of curves, so you got to be ready to move with them and figure out what you're going to do and make the best of your life and enjoy it the best you can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, Dan, just really quickly, why do you think people are starting to get a connection again to uplifting stories? Because it does seem like during this difficult day and time that we're gathering more and more people that are finding uplifting stories, whether that's stories of conquering traumatic situations, kind of like what Lydia has done, or other uplifting stories. But it does seem like we are starting to see this comeback of the emotional story and everything like that. So why do you think that that is in this particular day and age?
Well, I hope that's true. I mean, if we gravitate towards stories that make us feel good, those are the stories we also want to share with others to make others feel good. Maybe that's a stretch, but there's various challenges in all our lives. We all get down for a lot of different reasons, and a lot of time, you can get to drugs and pills and other activities that take you away from that. But I think when reading a book like Life Answers Back can make you feel enjoy life and see what others have overcome and what others have achieved in their lives, it can put a different perspective in your mind. It can not only make you feel good, but it can make you feel confident and hopefully glad you got to read that book and get that inspiration.
Lydia, who are some of the people that inspired you just in terms of wanting to tell your story? Because I know there have been some famous people that went through some traumatic experiences. I think about Oprah Winfrey. I think about others as well. But who are some of the people that really inspired you to go ahead and want to write this kind of story that you have written? Because it is a hard-hitting story, but it's one that more people need to hear and everything like that. So who are some of the celebrities or maybe just people in your own life that inspired you to write this particular book?
Well, this may sound funny, but the people who inspired me to write this book were the people that had not, that I don't know, that people that I could help possibly with my story. And so, because one thing that drives me is to make the world a better place, and that people do find peace within, and people do find love. And that's what I want for everyone. And so, the main purpose and the main inspiration for writing this and going through my own, trauma and caca through all of this and writing, because it was very difficult, took 2 decades, is for the people that I don't know, that if I could help some way to hope on this road, this journey that we all do want peace. We all want to be happy. We want love. We want to be respected,
That makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people are very big on vision boards and everything like that. Sometimes they can be a wonderful way of getting to that piece that you're talking about. But I just wanted your thoughts around vision boards, because I do have friends that are into vision boards. I don't have one at the moment, but I have thought about getting them and everything like that. But what is your take on vision boards, particularly when you're trying to have these kind of honest conversations?
I can't really answer to that, because I have maybe done a vision board once or twice. So it's not something that I do. And so I really can't answer that. I have had friends in my groups of, helping. We have a get together with certain women and we help each other. I have one woman friend she does it and she swears by it, and things come into her life that she puts on her vision board. So, I haven't, I cannot speak to it, but I know that some people really, really like it, and it does well for them. So, yeah.
This is for both of you. How important do you think to have positive thoughts in your life? Because I know one of the things that I do on this show is I always get my guests at the end of the show or at the end of their segment to give a message of positivity and everything like that. So, but sometimes people can think that positive thinking culture can quickly disconnect people from their own inner truths and everything like that. So how important do you think it is to have positive thinking culture in general and everything like that? So how important, I'll start with you, Lydia, but I definitely want to hear from Dan as well. So how important do you think it is to have this positive nature in our life, even if we're going through traumatic times?
Okay, well, first of all, got to be careful Careful. This positive thinking thing, okay. When we're going through trauma and it feels like shit, we have to admit it. You can't not lie and say, oh, this is great. No, because it's not. And it isn't good and it sucks. And so you have to be honest and face it and then say, well, why don't I like it? And this and that. I mean, be honest with yourself. Sometimes that brings you to tears. I mean, most of the time it will, because you're like being honest and confronting the fact of why it's not bad, why it's good, not great. And so we have to go through that process. You have to admit it and you have to accept it that you feel like crap. And then after that, the problem is don't stay there. After that, what is it that you want? How would you like it to be? And then try to create your positive thoughts on that, having first dealt with the fact that you think this sucks. So, I mean, just saying it's positive, just because you're lying to yourself and you're lying to everything around you, and the energy around you knows it. So you can't do that. You have to admit it and then deal with what it is, the emotions that come up because you admitted it.
Yeah, because I know one thing you talk about is that conflict that exists between the mind and the heart, and sometimes we have to shed those inherited beliefs that no longer fit. So, at what point did you get rid of that inherent beliefs that didn't fit into your life, and how important do you think it is to have that alignment? Because I know one thing that I talk about even on this network is having that total alignment and everything, or as much as we can have it, because we are emotional beings, we are mental beings, we are physical beings, and we are definitely to some degree spiritual beings. And by spiritual, I don't necessarily mean church religion, because that to me is separate from spirituality, because I'm one of the people that believe that spirituality is more of a connection to God or a God force and everything like that. But that's just my own personal philosophy and all along those lines, because sometimes I think the churches get too caught up in the personality of the church. But that's where I have a problem with some churches, not all churches, but some churches and everything like that. But I just wondering your own thoughts around this alignment that we need to have of all of our elements. And I just mentioned the four that I'm aware of, and maybe I missed one.
For me, I think it's a journey. And also people don't like that word. It's a process. It's nothing's cut and dry. And then again, this day and age that we're like, everything wants to be easy and, just quickly fix it. It's not going to happen. You have to have the courage and the responsibility to do the work. And so alignment comes with time, and it comes with knowing yourself and really being honest. What is it do I want? And, what am I willing to do? And those are things that are difficult to look and face in the mirror. And most of us don't want to. So alignment comes with work, and it comes with time, and it comes with compassion for yourself and others around you we're all on this road. We're all trying to figure it out. We all want peace. We all want love. We all want respect. We want a life that we're happy, that we're living, So yeah, alignment comes with time.
Dan, what's your take on that? I'm going to actually get off camera for a minute, because I'll see if I can find your book, because I do have a copy of the book that I was going to show you and everything like that. But definitely share your thoughts around alignment while I go find a copy of that book really quickly.
Well, everybody is different. And like I say, things are always changing in our lives that we have to deal with. You align all sorts of things that you've chosen to do in your life, whether it's work or play or commitments, whatever. The nice thing about the impact storytelling can have is when you see how other people have dealt with alignment issues, how they balance their life challenges. You can see people that have overcome things much worse than you have. And therefore it gives you confidence that if they can do something like that, you can do also. I think it's hard to walk in anybody else's shoes, but everybody is different. Some people are able to breeze through life without any challenges. Others have one challenge after another, but you need to learn to deal with it and be optimistic about it, and have confidence that you can overcome anything negative. And that's one of the things in the book. There was, I think, one section that talked about 7 entrepreneurs whose perseverance will inspire you, and things like perseverance where we're wanting to give up on something. but it shows that those that persevere were able to make great gains and have success in their life strictly because they didn't give up. So, if it gives you that message to not give up, it's something positive. Another thing positive about reading the book.
Yeah, and I see that at the end of the book on page 206, you talk about the 6 best doctors in the world: sunlight, rest, exercise, diet, self-confidence, and friends. And I also love these 5 undeniable facts of life. Don't educate your children to be rich, educate them to be happy. So when they grow up, they will know the value of things, not the price. Best awarded words: eat your food as your medicine. Otherwise, you have to eat medicine as your food. There is a big difference between a human being and being a human. Only a few really understand it. You're loved when you're born. You'll be loved when you die. In between, you have to manage. If you just want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. So that's some of the quotes that were at the end of the book. But you do have some amazing things, including things around keeping your faith. And there's a chapter called The Old Dog and everything along those lines. You even got a book about the 7 wonders of the world. And there was some disagreement apparently in the book with some people talking about Egypt's Great Pyramid, Taj Mahal, the Grand Canyon, the Empire State Building, and China's Great Wall, and everything like that. And you said at the end of this particular chapter that simple and ordinary things we take for granted are truly wondrous, a gentle reminder that the most precious things in life cannot be built by hand or brought by man. So it's definitely some great stories. You even had a commencement address by a Black student at Harvard and everything. And that was, I think that was Donovan Livingston that was doing the liftoff and everything like that. So you have some great things in the book that folks should definitely go and check out and everything like that. And you shared some of the stories, but that's just a couple of them. And like we said, out of the mouth of babes comes some great wisdom. And it seems to me that you even had wisdom from a homeless man. And that reminds me of a play I wrote called Confessions of a Puppy, where somebody was in the urban business world that had to be forced to ride the bus. And so they ran across a homeless person. They ran across a janitor. They ran across a number of other folks, including, I think, a couple that was hooked on drugs and everything like that. But one of the lessons that they learned was that the janitor knew more about the office than they were giving them credit for, because as we know, a lot of times it's the janitors and the secretaries that know a lot about what's going on in the corporations, not necessarily the CEOs and everything like that. So that was one of the points that I was making in my skit that was part of a greater play and everything like that I wrote some 20 years ago, 15 or 20 years ago, and everything like that. But I think it still resonates today as well and everything like that. So definitely it's a lot of important lessons that people can learn. But I do have a copy, as you mailed it to me, but there's the book, Life Answers Back. So you can actually get a copy of his book if you don't have it, but I have my copy and I've already looked at some of it and all along those lines. So definitely, Lydia, tell us the title of your book once again, so folks can hopefully get a copy of that book. I don't have my copy yet, but I will try to get that one as well, just like I got to get the travel book. But tell folks about the title of your book as well.
It's called To Hell With You, An Adventure Through Tragedy, Love, Betrayal, and Transformation. And yeah, it's on all the things, Audible, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and such, all the things. Yeah. So yeah.
Cool. And what's the number one lesson that you hope that people get from the book? Like you said, you're hoping that somebody will read it and get a important lesson. What's the number one lesson that if somebody was to pick up the book, you hope that they take away from the book after they read it?
Well, I can't really say one, because I think I wrote the book in such a way that it was written on levels. So right. At one level is a story. It's a bizarre story. So it's very entertaining. It can be. And then, but there's also very underlying messages. And so, but basically, as like I said before, just from reading my story, and then I'm still here and I'm alive and I'm somewhat thriving a little bit, that anything can be overcome.
It's great. And I appreciate both of you joining the show. I had the other guests on for about an hour and a half, and y'all have been on roughly the same amount of time. So usually the show can be anywhere from 2 hours. So this is one of the longer ones, but I've thoroughly enjoyed having all 4 of you on and everything like that. But I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked the 2 ladies that were on earlier and everything like that. And that is, and I know that maybe Lydia, you may not like this question, but it's one that I ask everybody, no matter whether they like it or not. But a message of positivity that you would love to share with our listening audience and all along those lines and all in that space. And also something that people might be surprised to know about you. Like earlier when I had my other guests, I mentioned that I'm into games like spinners, which is kind of like dominoes. And if I get together with my mom and my nephews, we might wind up playing that game as well as other games. We used to play Scrabble regularly and all along those lines. I had a ex that wanted me to go skydiving. I'm sorry, for me, a plane is to go from point A to point B. It's not to fall out of and everything like that. But I have considered whitewater rafting and all along those lines. So just tell us something that is on your bucket list that people might be surprised to know is on your bucket list or on your interest list and everything like that, and a message of positivity. So I guess I'll start with Dan, since Dan was first, and I'll close out with you, Lydia, and then we'll all get out of here because I've been here doing this show now for a few hours and everything like that. So Dan, if you're going to share with us your message of positivity and anything that people would be surprised to know is a hobby or interest of yours.
That's a tough one. I can think of a quote that said, if you stumble, make it part of the dance. And I think that's shown in a lot of the stories that we all face adversity, but with the right attitude, a lot of it isn't that important. A lot of it is things that we can overcome with the right decisions that we make, and that there's that we can learn a lot from other people. As far as my own bucket list, I think I mentioned earlier, I had all sorts of things on a bucket list, but life has thrown me a few curves. So my last thing in my bucket list is to try and help as many people as I can through this book. I naturally, as a family man with kids and grandkids, you want to do whatever you can to make sure that they don't make any of the same mistakes I made in life and that they make good ones. So focus on the family and focus on trying to improve lives through reading the book, but also, like I mentioned, we have the fundraising thing for any worthy cause. This book can raise a lot of money for a lot of great causes, and that would be something on my bucket list that I'd be thrilled if I see some big successes with helping others.
That sounds wonderful and everything like that. What about yourself, Lydia? What's something that is your thoughts around positivity, but also on your bucket list as well? So maybe there's something that's on your bucket list that you would like to accomplish, or maybe there's a hobby that you haven't picked up. I know that at the Cultural Arts Center that I work at, we've got a group of women that are amazing quilters and everything like that. And I keep seeing some of their quilts that they've designed, and they are very intricate. And I wish that I could do quilts like that, but I am not a sewer and never come close to being a sewer. I barely can do the cooking, but I have managed to get better in that than I used to be, even though my brother is a much better cook than I am and everything like that. And part of that is because I taught him when I was very young, because he said there's a 7-year gap between us. So I think when I was like 13 or 14, he reached up to the cupboard where the cookbook was and pulled the cookbook down and asked me to read it. So I read him the cookbook. So he got to learn how to cook. I got to develop some of my reading skills and all along those lines. So it was a win-win in that sense, but it's probably why he's a better cook than I am, because he was learning how to cook at a very young age. I think he was like 7. He might have even been 6 at that particular time and everything like that. So what's on your own bucket list of a hobby or an interest of yours that people might be surprised to know about you, and some words of positivity that you would like to share?
Okay, cool. Well, probably what people don't realize about me is that I am on the USA National Paraclimbing team, and I in the capacity as a caller. My partner is a climber, rock climber, and he's visually impaired, and I call for him. And so we've competed in different countries and in this year, and so we have a few more to go. So that's a strange thing that people would never guess. So yeah. And then as far as a bucket list in the book, To Hell With You, I would love to have it made into a feature film. And as far as positivity towards everyone, I mean, you just don't give up. Don't give up. There are times when you want to take a break and, admit what you feel, find some friends, find some help, to find something that lifts you up just a little bit to keep going. And don't give up, because we all know what happens when we give up. We know what it is. It's right in front of us. But you don't know what's there if you don't give up. You don't know what's there. You don't want what's creating and what's happening. So pursue, keep going, because that you don't know. We already know what's going to happen if you give up. So, and if I leave with one last note, and if I can, energetically, I send as much love to everyone who hears my voice and reads my book, and may love follow you always.
I appreciate that. That's a great message and everything like that. I do have a dear friend of mine that actually saw that long ago, that visited me at the Cultural Arts Center, who is a filmmaker at California. He's actually in Los Angeles. He did that film This Christmas along with Mekhi Phifer and Loretta Devine way back when, but he is still in the movie making industry. So who knows, maybe he'll be watching this story, because I know he watches quite a bit of my interviews, and maybe he'll reach out to you and say that, hey, that sounds like a good movie. So who knows who's listening to this show that might turn it into a movie and all along those lines. So Ronnie Warner, if you're listening, Lydia has a movie that she wants you to make of her book and everything along those lines. So Ronnie, if you're listening, know she's got great energy and everything like that, and it could be a great movie. So definitely, I just sent that message out to Ronnie through the wonders of the internet and everything like that. I played this video earlier. I think you saw it when you came in, Dan, and everything, but I do believe in the importance of education, and this will be the last video to get us on out of here. But if you both can share the importance of education, but not just the teachers, but also the support staff, because this particular award, which was created out of Oklahoma, is for like the guidance counselors, the resource officers, the cafeteria workers, the janitors, a number of others that make a school run and everything like that. So I'll start with you, Dan, and then I'll hear from Lydia as well. If you can think of somebody either in the school field, that whether it was a teacher or a janitor or a coach or whoever that really influenced you in your life when you were in your school ages. And after I hear from Lydia, then I'll play the video and we'll all get out of here and everything like that. But I'll start with you, Dan. Who is a teacher or a support staff person that really inspired you?
I had a lot of great teachers through my life that I thoroughly enjoyed and learned from. I had a lot that I didn't care for, but you do learn the difference between people that have a real talent for teaching and reaching children. And that is something that is hard to teach, but some people seem to have it naturally. And when they teach, you understand everything they say and you absorb it and you benefit from it. Whereas somebody that's not really cut out to be a great teacher can bore the students to death and you can't remember half of what they said. So kudos to all the teachers that really knew their stuff in their lives or in their teaching life, and that helped me in my career to be a success.
Appreciate it. What about you, Lydia? Was there anybody that really inspired you as a teacher, or maybe like Dan, you have a overview of just teachers in general and everything like that? But who is somebody that inspired you and could even be a support person, or maybe as an overview of the entire industry, including, like I said, the cafeteria workers and the resource officers and others that are part of the education establishment?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I think teaching is the most important job on the planet, because they teach the little ones to the older, younger adults, and they are the future. And that is not how our society looks at it right now. The best of us should be with the students, not the people who are looking for the summer vacations and all that kind of stuff, because a true teacher knows, is a master, knows how to transform, as Dan was saying, that passion, that love of that subject onto the student. And also that person is an expert in that field. So for me, education is the most important job on this planet, but we do not view it that way, unfortunately, as a whole. And again, the best of the best should be with the youth. And as far as who was inspirational and helped me, or somebody that I admire, was one of my professors, my literature professors in college, Spanish literature. And he was a person that saw the ability of a student to grow and not somebody who just sat there, I know this, and did not advance at all through the class. And I thought that was extraordinary, because a lot of teachers didn't see that. They saw the growth, and he helped the growth. So, and I'm grateful for that.
I appreciate it. Great thoughts and everything like that. I'm going to play this video from my friend in Oklahoma that is honoring those teachers. And I think it's actually a worldwide award, if I remember correctly. But the two of you, along with the two I had earlier, were great guests. I appreciate both of you being on the online dinner party. We'll see who we have on the 15th. I know I've got some guests scheduled for the rest of July, but I've enjoyed all four of you, the two of you right now and the two that I had on earlier. Always a great show and always good conversation where we sit and learn from each other, because that's the way I envision this show is like a real dinner party, and the way that I envisioned my parents when they used to play bid with some of their friends at our house that we were living at in Warrenton. So I enjoyed both of you being on, just like I enjoyed the young ladies being on earlier as well. So hopefully I'll see y'all on some future shows as well, but I appreciate both of you for being on this show, and I look forward to seeing you in future episodes and just seeing you out and about in the streets of the internet as well. So definitely appreciate both of you for being on, but right now we're going to get out of here with this particular video.
Thank you for having us.
No
Yes,
problem.
thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay.
It's non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop, non-stop. I won't fold, I won't drop until we on top. Only going non-stop.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.
It's